or just the four of you?
Well, you guys already did it. You already did it. That's the beauty of it. No.
All right, Sally should be joining in a second here.
Then stop it. Wait,
It's 6 months before this exam. Thanks for coming back with us.
Oh, I mean, wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
I was a little panicked earlier when I was like, wait, you're not coming? You're not? Oh, gosh.
Do we have a
And then Jordan texted me. I was like, it's all okay.
little mutiny?
You're just waiting for one more trustee to join us. There she is. Awesome. All right, welcome, Sally. And so if you all don't mind, I was gonna help run the work session. And then when we move into our special meeting, we'll have the trustees run that portion since it is a public hearing. Does that work? Awesome. All right, so it is November 7th. Time is 5:07 and we are starting the trustee work session. And today's topic is on, let's see, we're going on nonprofit budget requests and partner requests. Matt, can you do a roll call, please?
Sure thing.
Thank you.
Trustee Davis. Here. Trustee Kringer.
Here.
Trustee Harper. Is not with us tonight. Trustee Bierman. Here. Trustee George. Not here with us. Mayor Pro Tem Marty.
Here.
And Mayor Furman is not with us right now.
Excellent, thank you. So we do have a quorum, which isn't necessarily required for work sessions, but is required for a special meeting that starts at 6:30. So tonight we are reviewing our 2023 nonprofit budget requests. The Finance Committee has had a first stab at this and has looked at it. We had originally budgeted 40,000. We received a total ask of 95,762. So our job tonight is to hear the organizations that have been invited to come present, and then kind of whittle that down to something a little bit more manageable. When the Finance Committee went through this, they whittled it down to about 50,462. Some of that went over to our partners. So you'll see in your board packet, there's recommendations that it would be taken out of the partners budget rather than the nonprofit request. And so what we'll do tonight is I have some organizations here that would like to present. And then we'll run through those organizations. And then afterwards, I'll ask if there's any amendments that you would like to make to the Finance Committee's proposal. And we can make a determination there. From there, it'll go into the budget, which will then be presented on November 14th as part of our public hearing for our notice for our budget. And if anyone has any issues with anything in the budget during that time, they can come to our next meeting on November 28th and voice their concerns. Did I miss anything? Okay, excellent. So first on our agenda for presentations is a partner. I had to do it a little bit out of order, just with everyone's schedule, but so first is presentations from the Creative District. And I think we have Lisa Branner on the line. We could promote Lisa to panelist. And this is a check-in too with our summer sounds and how that went in our partnership there. And a continuation of the partnership. There she is.
Hi, good evening, everybody.
Hi, Lisa.
So first of all, I just wanted to thank the trustees and the town in general for all of your support of the Creative District over the last several years. I am here tonight more to do a season wrap up on Summer Sounds than anything else, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the Creative District and some of our goals as well. So I am going to jump on in and share my screen if that works. I've got a PowerPoint for you all. And hopefully you can all see that. All right. So 2022 season wrap up on Silverton Summer Sounds. First, we'll start with just a little information about the Creative District, in case some of you are not aware. We were founded in 2019, and we are an all-volunteer nonprofit organization.
There we go. Sorry, we're just adjusting you.
No worries. Our board of directors, there are 5 of us. You can see the names there. We are a working board. None of us are getting paid. We're all volunteers putting in time and energy on behalf of this organization and the creative community here in Silverton. And being founded in 2019, we kind of had the wind taken out of our sails when the pandemic hit. And that really slowed us down in terms of programming. But this year, we came out strong with a couple of different events, as you all know. And I'll be talking about those a little bit later in the presentation. Our mission is to support growth and sustainability of arts and culture in Silverton and San Juan County and contribute to the economic prosperity of the artists and our community. Some of the benefits of a creative district. So if you're not aware, Colorado has, I think, 30 creative districts that have been certified by the state through the Colorado Creative Industries Program. And the goal of that program is to help communities increase jobs, incomes, and investments in creative places. So the arts are really seen as an economic driver. And some of the benefits are contributing to a healthy community economically and then also through quality of life. So attracting new and creative entrepreneurs to a community, enhancing economic and civic capital, strengthening community identity, showcasing arts and culture through events, and then importantly on the economic front, providing access to grants and technical assistance that otherwise would not be available. Some of the programs and initiatives that the Creative District, the Silverton Creative District, has undertaken in our short existence. Number one, Silverton Arts Festival. That was a resurrection of a long defunct event that finally happened this year. We were raring to go with that in 2020, and it didn't happen because of the pandemic. So we did make it happen this year with 32 artists participating from the region and across the country. Summer Sounds, as you know, has become another kind of crowning glory of the Creative District. We had about 1,000 attendees over the course of the 4 concerts this year. We've been hosting First Friday Art Walks for the last 3 years, I believe it is, with 20 or more shops and galleries participating. The Mistletoe Market has been happening for more than a decade, but only under the purview of the Creative District for about the last 3 or 4. And we're anticipating at least 15 vendors at this year's event. We've already got 10 signed up. This year we created a Silverton Artist Directory, so a nice printed brochure. We've also been curating an online arts calendar for the community. We've got a number of partnerships and collaborations that we participate in. I think what I'm most excited about at the moment in that regard is that we are working with Mountain Film to bring the Mountain Film on Tour event here to Silverton in January. That'll be happening in January. So there's a gentleman who reached out to us and asked us to help co-host, and we're working on that. But we've also been working with the Silverton Film Office, the school, the Powerhouse, just trying to collaborate wherever we can. And then we are aiming to pursue creative district certification through the State Office of Economic Development and International Trade. That's maybe a little bit of a longer term goal, and it will take some effort for us to get there. But that is ultimately the goal of our organization. And, you know, why does that matter? Why do the arts matter? Well, the arts are a serious economic driver for the state of Colorado. In 2019, they contributed more than $13.7 billion to the state economy, produced $31.6 billion in sales of goods and services statewide, and $1.7 billion in sales on the Western Slope alone. The music industry in Colorado is also growing. And so a report that was put out in 2018 was talking about growth of 24% from 2010 to 2016 in the music industry in our state. That's 1.4 billion in revenue and over 16,000 jobs statewide. Most of that is concentrated on the Front Range in the Denver metro area, but the Southwest region, this corner of the state, produced nearly 37 million in jobs, or excuse me, in revenue, and 600 jobs roughly in 2016. So that brings me to some discussion about summer sounds and why this is something that's important for our community. So this program was started in 2018 by the town. It has now transitioned over to the creative district producing it with partnership and support from the town. This was our first year doing it. But I was the person who started it with the town. So there's been consistency in leadership from the town's umbrella now to the creative districts. The formula that we've been using is that we have local opening acts. We want to showcase our local musical talent. And then we bring in national or regional touring headliners to be the focal point of the evening. There's food, beer, and wine available. These events are free and family friendly, and they are designed really with locals in mind, but they do attract visitors. And we definitely saw that this year. We were polling people about where they were coming from, and we definitely see audiences from neighboring communities coming to participate in our events. In 2022, we hosted 4 concerts, 8 musical acts, 2 at each show, and we had 18 volunteers per concert. So it took 72 volunteers essentially to pull this thing off. Combined attendance, we saw anywhere from about 225 to 275 at each show. So we're estimating about 1,000 people attended over the course of the summer. I'd like to stress that that is only people who walked into the barricaded, gated off area. We had a volunteer with a clicker, counting attendance. There were many more people outside of the barricades having a dog play date outside of the parameters that we had set for the liquor licensing. So probably significantly more people than 1,000 participated when all was said and done. The new venue in Memorial Park, while it took more energy and work to host a show there, it really, once we got it dialed in, I think it worked incredibly well. People were really excited about that venue. There was a learning curve for us, of course, this year, and some additional expenses having to rent a stage. The town and creative district partnership, I just want to tell you that your Parks and Rec staff are absolutely amazing. They were so helpful and so willing to just pitch in on anything that they could. We could not have run as successful a series without their participation and help. So I just wanted to really give kudos to your town staff. And then also to, underscore the fact that this event is still free to the public. And that is a goal of that, is for it to remain something that is open to anybody, regardless of economic circumstance. Some of our financial highlights this year, we budgeted about $35,000 for this event this year. And, a significant share of that came from the town with the contract that we have with you. We did also receive tourism board funding. We had 38 different sponsors come on board and contribute anything from $100 up to thousands of dollars. We have been pursuing grants. Individual donations have made a difference for this. And then, of course, concession sales at the event all contribute. And when all is said and done, we are going to show a very small profit on the event this year, which is great. That money will be rolled over to grow the series and support our organization's general operations. And that's kind of our goal, is to be able to bring in a little bit more than we're spending and have it support our organization. We have been staffing pretty much exclusively with volunteers. I paid a bar captain this year because I felt it was really important to have somebody with their eye on things at the bar, and we pay a sound engineer. But aside from that, everybody who is working this event is doing it on a volunteer basis. And our largest expenses go to paying the talent. This year, the stage was a significant expense, and then also the sound engineering. For 2023 and into the future, we are hoping to continue to grow the series and attract higher caliber talent. We'd like to pay our local acts a bit more, and also are hoping to be able to pay some of the folks that are working the event. I could see paying some stage hands. I could see paying some additional staff to help make this thing go. And as we attract larger audiences, we obviously need a larger venue. The Creative District Board talked about our options, and we're feeling like we need to continue in Memorial Park for the foreseeable future, just because we've kind of outgrown Columbine. But as we look ahead to the future, we're talking about possible multi-day festival as an option, and some other music programming, perhaps using some of the other great spaces that we have in town, including Columbine Park, to host other programs. So that's what I have for you all this evening. Again, I just wanted to say thank you for your support of the Creative District. Thank you for believing in us and being able to pull both this event and the Arts Festival off. It's been a really busy summer for us, and we couldn't have done it without support from the town. And again, can't tell you how great your Parks and Rec staff have been. So I am happy at this point to entertain any questions. And Carol Wilkins, I believe, is also either in the audience or she may be online if you all have any additional questions that I can't answer.
And so for the Creative District, we had a nonprofit request as well. And that was for the amount of $10,000 for general operating funds to support their mission. And the Finance Committee recommended, I just want to make sure I get this right, that we fund $7,500 of that $10,000. Okay. No questions?
No.
All right.
That was great, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Lisa. All right. Next, we have the clinic. Come on up.
Hi. I'm sorry, I just have a little bit of notes in front of me. My name is Megan Davenport, and I am the treasurer for the clinic. I'm just coming to you guys because originally we asked for $6,648, and that was so that we could get a blood pressure machine that will take blood pressures electronically instead of manually, 2 new computers because our computers are quite old, and an iPad so that we can take it into the room. The provider can bring it into the room and use it. And then the final thing that we're asking for is an electronic health record, which costs $150 per month and is a total of $1,800 for the year. And we were told that the Finance Committee is suggesting that we should not fund the $1,800 for the electronic health record. So I'm just going to talk about the importance of the electronic health record and like kind of what our goals are for the next 5 years. So we did a lot of research about this EHR to figure out like which one is the best one. And usually EHRs are between the range of like $300 and $500. And this one is $150 per month. So that's per month. So we found one that's about half the cost of what a lot of other ones are. And then also we were recommended not to go with a free version. And the reason for that is because there are usually caps on the amount of patients that you actually can put on a free version of the EHR. And then there are usually ads, just like if you were to use, a paid version versus a free version of any app on your phone, you would see that there are definitely differences. And that would be slower for us to be able to use the EHR if we didn't have the paid version. And then also this version that we found, Lois and Agnes, I think, have tried out. And so they know that they like this one. And, like I said, it's about half the cost too. So that's like one of our very first goals for our goals in the next 5 years. And I think I gave you guys a handout that you should have gotten. So we're hoping to transfer all of our existing and new records to an EHR system. And that should speed up the time spent with each patient and allow for more patients to be seen in the day. But if it's not a paid version of this electronic health record, then it might not be as efficient. With that EHR, we're hoping that we can bill insurances. And from there, the EHR actually could determine the difference between like billing and a sliding scale for people that don't have insurances. And then that would help the clinic to become self-sustaining. So we're asking for this amount, for this year, but we're hoping that we wouldn't have to ask for that amount in the future, so that we could be able to bill insurances so that we can be self-sustaining. We don't need, all these extra things or to ask for this grant again. And then our third goal is that we're really hoping to maintain services. I mean, we're a primary care facility. Of course, we would love to have more services in the future, but this is just our 5-year plan. We're thinking like right now that we're just a primary care facility, but then on the days that the clinic isn't open, the Miners Hospital is used, for other services like acupuncture and massage and counseling and therapy. And then hopefully in the next 5 years, we're hoping to be able to operate as a primary care clinic at least 2 times per week. So if we can add more days and hours, then that would make it an easier time for people to get an appointment. And with more funds from billing through this EHR, the clinic would be able to operate even more days out of the week. So I know it's a big ask, and I know that the finance committee already kind of whittled down our amount, but we are still asking for that $1,800 for the EHR. And we're just hoping that you would reconsider. But if you have any other questions, I'm here. I think Lois is on with us and Kim Eisner is also here, all people on the board of directors. Yeah.
Just looking at the nonprofit request form, it says EHR startup fees and annual costs. So does that mean that the annual costs are $2,500? I'm trying to that $1,800 that.
No, the $1,800 is the annual cost, but then we're also hoping that we can use some of those funds to pay. We are writing all of the records by hand, and then those are being faxed, including all of our referrals and like prescriptions and things. And that is just like, we need to bring ourselves to the 21st century a little here.
You can't see as many patients per day. You can't bill insurance. There's a lot of limitations. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, Megan, you and I I've talked with the board of directors. I raised this in the finance committee. I think there are just a couple sustainability issues that I have concerns of with the clinic. And so I think primary care in Silverton is a huge, important need and should not go away. And I just want to make sure that the way in which we're funding the clinic, the amount of money that's going to the clinic is appropriate for the town versus the county. Counties often do primarily the share of healthcare services. And again, just asking kind of what's the status of your board? I know that's been a lot in flux. And what's the status of your staffing? Lois has wanted to retire. What's the status for Agnes? What's kind of the long-term plan? I think these goals are really great to hear and a great direction for the clinic. I think I still just have sustainability concerns around your medical director, your nurse, and your nurse manager.
Totally. And those are valid concerns because this is part of the problem is that like Lois has been trying to retire and she would love to be able to do that. And I think that we really need to be able to, sustainably like put somebody new in. And she's currently training somebody right now. Erin Lane is going to take over for Lois starting January 1. And we're hoping that with that transition, like we couldn't have asked, the grant to pay a salary, but it's been really challenging with the funding that we are given from the county, which they will not pay us anymore. It's been really challenging for us to be able to say like, okay, like we'll be able to, pay a nurse this amount of money when like no nurse is like willing to come in here for that amount of money. So the fact that we got Erin and that she was able to agree on a salary that felt right for her was a really big deal. And so we are able to do that. But like in order to, if we can get this electronic health record and bill insurances, we're hoping that that will cause some, have sustainability for our funding. And right now, so much of our funding comes from donations, which is awesome. But like we just are hoping that we can have this little bit more so that we can, get this started and be able to really continue with this. Billing insurances is going to change the clinic in a big way.
Yeah. So you have plans for, if Agnes were to retire, will Agnes's salary is covered by Mercy. So is there an arrangement, a contract, an agreement with Mercy that they would continue funding Agnes's position? Because without that, you don't have the funding to continue operating.
That may be a question for Kim.
That is a concern of ours, and we've talked with Mercy. They said at this point in time, they don't have a backup for Agnes that they are ready to bring forward. They're anxious to help us, and they are very concerned about the organization, and they appreciate being in town. And we do give them many referrals that go to Mercy. So we have kind of a mutual system like that. They have a new person in charge of their funding. This is on their community benefits program. And so they do have a new person in there, and we have had numerous conversations with him. At this point, we haven't gotten any formal answer about what else would be available for Agnes if she were to retire.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And Agnes has no intention of retiring.
Sure. She's got a lot of longevity there, I know, but for
Yes, and she loves being there. So
yeah.
she likes walking downtown and having the people say, hi. So that's good too.
I think another question we had, and this kind of I think goes for all of the organizations that we're talking with, and maybe we can implement it for the future, is kind of reporting on what the money has been spent on that we've previously given. I know we gave money for some loans last time, and I talked to a couple community members and they were like, we didn't know those loans available. It hasn't been advertised. We aren't really aware that this is an option. So just making sure that if monies were allocated last year, what has the organization done with those? I appreciated Lisa's commentary on that. And then someone raised up a concern for me that I think is a concern if the town has a further partnership with you all is, does the organization as a whole have liability insurance or medical malpractice insurance? Because that feels like a financial.
No, we don't. Through the clinic, we don't have any insurance. We are through Dr. Brokering.
Okay.
And he has insurance.
Okay.
And his position is medical director. So he works with the county for the county, basically. And so we don't have any ourselves, but we are looking into it. And that is one of the things on our list.
Okay, great. So if any of the providers or if there was any issue, does his insurance cover that? Or is it a liability to the county or the town?
Looking into that. I really can't give you a direct answer on that, but that's certainly a concern of ours.
Great.
And actually, I can speak to what we did with the funds last year because it was advertised in the paper for several weeks. And then also we do currently have somebody that is utilizing that loan and is working on to make sure they pay it back for their daughter. So we are utilizing that money. So thanks for that too.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Mountain Studies Institute. Okay.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Jake Kurzweil. If you haven't met me before, I am a hydrologist for the Mountain Studies Institute. I'm the associate director of our water programs, and I'm also a professor at Fort Lewis. But today I'm here representing the Mountain Studies Institute. If you're unfamiliar with the Mountain Studies, it's an owl, huh? I don't need to look at the. If you're unfamiliar with the Mountain Studies Institute, we are a nonprofit that uses science people they can use to empower mountain communities through research, monitoring, and education. We focus predominantly on forested systems, hydrology, and then outreach and education. I do want to actually highlight some of the funding that we've gotten from the town in the past, and we really appreciate your support. So last year, you were a matching partner on what we called the AHEAD grant, and that stands for the Animas Headwaters Ecological Action Division. And the goal with that was to get ahead of this federal funding that we're seeing coming through to identify places for restoration, preservation, and possible sustainable recreation expansion. We're also currently working on a project with the BLMs to preserve wetlands, particularly fens. Fens are peatland systems where they have at least 40 centimeters of peat. And I wanted to highlight that because fens represent only 3% of the terrestrial land surface, but account for double the global carbon store in forests. So if you think about fighting climate change, addressing fens are really, really important. I also wanted to highlight another project that we're working with downstream users. We're now working with the Southern Ute Indian tribe to do their non-point source assessment, as well as their NPS management plan. But today I'm here to talk to you about a project that we put forward in a proposal to the town, and we appreciate your support on that. And I just wanted to provide a little bit more clarification and be here for questions. We do appreciate the support that you've already said you would give. If you can't give any more than that, it's very welcomed. So I'll just say that. So there are two interconnected issues that dramatically face the Western United States, and that is the decrease in our snowpack and an increase in our wildfire season. And this is encroaching into our communities. We see it almost seasonally. This year, we actually hit the 97th percentile of fire risk in June. We've never seen that before. It was so intense that you could feel it. We had 3 fires in June, and then we got lucky by what people were calling a great monsoon season. And I want to point it out to everybody, that was below average. So we are seeing aridification happen, so much so that we are getting normalized to below average years, thinking that this is normal. So to address this, we're trying to understand, and I'm going to turn this into a little bit of a lecture, and I'm going to ask people, does anybody know what is the largest reservoir in the United States? Does anybody know? Largest reservoir? Any guesses? Someone's got to have a guess. Normally people say Lake Mead or Lake Powell. And
I was going to guess Lake Powell.
there you go, Sally. Thank you so much. You're harder than my freshman class. But yes, so you might say Lake Powell. That is true if it's man-made, but if we think about these as actual systems, our forests and our mountains are actually our largest reservoirs. Snowpack is our largest reservoir, and we're seeing that decline dramatically. It's statistically significantly declining. So is stream flow. I just did a study for the city of Durango. They've seen their primary water source decrease by 35% over the last 25 years. That's serious numbers. So what we're trying to say is, hey, can we actually structure our forest? Can we kill 2 birds with 1 stone? Can we do wildfire mitigation that increases our ability to retain, accumulate snow as our primary storage source? So we're doing this through a fairly simple process called snowtography. And we set up these transects. We use game cameras that gives us snow depth off of a stake. We go out and measure SWE. And we can actually understand how do changes in canopy impact the amount of water that we get. So we're really trying to address 2 things. Can we reduce wildfires via wildfire mitigation? And 2, can we increase our water yield? Now, as a headwaters county and town, it's really important to study this. So we're partnering with the Colorado Center for Snow and Avalanche Studies, Fort Lewis, NAU, which is Northern Arizona University, the United States Department of Agriculture, and the Nature Conservancy. And so far, we are building a regional network. We've got sites in Arizona, Colorado, and now we're putting them into Montana. This summer, I installed 3, and we asked about a site at Swamp Angel, which you graciously supported, and we do appreciate that. What is also very cool about this project is it not only supports local resources, but it supports locals. So one of my great technicians who's been with the Mountain Studies Institute for almost 5 years now is hopefully going to go to master's at NAU to support this project and do a regional analysis to understand over these different sites, what is the best way to manage our forests and our water systems. And the whole goal of this project is to really create climate resilient forests and water supplies. I'd love to take questions. Again, we really appreciate your support and past funding. It's going towards a project that we're implementing this year, and we're excited to continue to move forward. That was only like 5 minutes.
I know, that was quick.
Great. Any questions? Sally, your dog is doing just fine.
Oh, I know that's not true. But I appreciate the supervision. Hey, I do have a question, though. I don't want to interrupt anyone else if I am.
No, you're my only good student in this class.
So the request for funding from the town is related to the project that involves the student attending grad school and then sort of spearheading that study, if I'm not mistaken. Can you correct me at some point if I'm wrong?
So far, so good.
Okay, so I guess my question is there a potential that is this student enrolled? What if they don't get in? It just seems like there's some, it sort of rests on the assumption that the student is sort of in school and going to lead this project. It sounds like a really important project and very relevant to our community and a lot of the points in our master plan as well. I just want to understand the connection of that role and the funding.
Yeah, it's a great question. And so just to be totally transparent, that student is Haley Farwell. If you see her around town, please say hi to any of us. Carly Bonwell, there's 3 of us at MSI that work in Silverton. Please say hi. We're an important part of your community. So the way grad school works, if you're doing it right, is you have a professor that says, I will take you on before you even apply. So that's the systematic way that you go through this. So we already have a professor at NAU. Her name is Sally Diamond. She has agreed to take Haley on as a student, and she's also agreed to provide $15,000 to $20,000 of funding to go towards the equipment costs.
Okay, great. Thanks.
You bet. And just to be clear, our ask was very high, and we knew that it was very high. And we appreciate what you provided. The other sources of funding that we're going after are the Southwest Basin Roundtable, the Southwest Conservation District for a combined 100,000. We're also going to the Nature Conservancy for another 20,000. And then Sally Diamond is providing another 20,000. So we are spreading the cost out. My approach with grant funding is I shoot for the moon and land up still here on Earth.
And Sally Diamond is just a great name, by the way. If the town commits something less than the ask, how prohibitive is that for the schooling and the project to continue?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one of the things that this project hinges on is match fund. So when we go to the Southwest Basin Roundtable, there's a 25% match. That's roughly $20,000 for the total project that we're looking at right now. If the town were to decrease its match, its contribution, it would make it more challenging for us to meet that cash match. And in fact, if we could get 1,000, 2,000 more, we would be at what we need, but I am not going to push my luck.
I think for me, I'm kind of building on what Sally's saying. I think, Jake, you did a great presentation and answer the questions and obviously establish the importance of this. And this is why I think being up here is so hard, because I've said over and over, nobody wants to rank their favorite children, right? We're like, we'll give you some and you some, but not you as much. And it's very challenging, right, for us, because all of these groups that are presenting to us contribute amazing things to the community, play a role, have an impact, everything from climate change to delivering primary care to putting on events. I think for me, I keep coming to sort of philosophically, what's within the town's responsibility. And so funding a master's student, I get a little hung up on sort of town philosophically, even though I think that the benefit could come back to our region. And
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Great. And that makes total sense. And let me be clear, in the way that we have structured the funding, the town is not supporting the master's student. Haley is actually going after her own funding through something called NNF that would cover her tuition as well as a stipend. It would be inappropriate for a town or county to fund an individual master's student project. So we understand that.
Yeah.
This is really the funding that we were looking for, is actually for labor for CSAS at MSI to support the project at Swamp Angel.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, thanks.
I really appreciate your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? I don't want to cut anybody off, but I felt it.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And I had scheduling at 6 o'clock, but they said they were not going to present. So I wanted to invite the film office as well to see if you wanted to present.
So I am more of a pen and paper kind of person, so I've brought folders for you guys. And these folders is an overview of a business plan. We've got a much longer, more detailed one that I can provide upon request. But after that, after the overview is our 5-year plan. And then before that is some numbers from last year. It's our 2021 project spending report. And it's really, really tiny. I apologize for that. It's just kind of hard to fit it all on one page. And then some letters of recommendation from both a citizen and a business in town. We have some more from producers as well, which again, I can provide upon request. Thank you guys for having me here tonight and for considering our request, the $10,000 donation. We really appreciate even the $7,500. We've been operating on very minimal funds and resources anyway. It's really just a one-person run nonprofit, so we don't really require all that much. But I find it a wise investment in Silverton's future, as I'm proud of the accomplishments that we've already had in the last couple of years in the infancy of the film office, even without, we've always had support from the town, but without a larger budget. And I believe as we grow, so can our economy. Who am I? My name is Rebecca Berteau. I'm executive director of the Silverton Film Office. I've been in the industry for 20 years as a costume designer, art director, and producer. And I came here in 2017 on a project called The Great Alaskan Race. That project had 75 cast and crew, and we were here for about 6 weeks. And in that 6 weeks, we spent over $600,000 in the community. That month's tax revenue compared to the year before in February and the year after was up 78%. So it was a huge hike in tax revenue. I spent 6 weeks living in number 3 at the Triangle Motel and fell in love with Silverton. And I saw an opportunity here. I saw an opportunity to be able to live somewhere I love, but also bring something I love to do here as well. And I couldn't be more grateful for all of the support we had then and have continued to have. What is the Silverton Film Office? Our mission statement is the Silverton Film Office attracts and facilitates film production in Silverton and San Juan County for the purpose of economic development. We also provide education towards job development in the film industry. From our larger business plan, I've pulled out a couple of excerpts. There is a problem and a solution for every business plan. And the problem, which I don't see as much of a problem because we live in a beautiful place, but the problem I saw here that I thought that the film office could solve was that Silverton and San Juan County are visually stunning. They're amazing vistas, 1880s period authentic architecture and interiors, and virgin natural settings that can't be found elsewhere. In addition, we have capable, motivated, and skilled workers. Unfortunately, our economy is primarily and heavily based on tourism. While tourism is extremely lucrative, it focuses our economy around summer vacation and ski season, leaving the rest of the year unbalanced. Many of our businesses close, leaving our workforce to scramble for enough income to maintain our climbing cost of living. Businesses that do stay open see less income compared to their overhead. Film productions can significantly alleviate the strain on our economy, yet there are some obstacles to overcome. Our rural locale means that film productions have to bring their entire support crew with them, and this is at significant cost to them to lodge and feed all these additional workers. So the lack of infrastructure for the film industry means that they have to bring all of their own supplies and equipment, as well as spend a considerable amount of time and money pre-planning. Despite these drawbacks, we have seen that our locations alone are desirable and pristine enough to offset the financial strain for motivated productions. Lastly, our limited access to the outside world has continually caused us to struggle to make the arts available to our school children and adults alike as an option for education in a career modality. While we have had several creative entrepreneurs, our economy has yet to find the optimal balance to truly support creatives without the means to start and operate their own businesses. I think that last part for me is really important because I'm a parent and I see that the school does a really good job with providing education in theater and dance, but it's rather seasonal. It's when we have the dance company come and do lessons or when we have Nate in town. And I don't know where I would be in my career without the exposure to theater personally. I think that's really important. I wouldn't be a costume designer if I didn't get to play with costumes as a kid. So the solution for that in my mind is in Silverton and San Juan County, we have a unique opportunity to capitalize on our history and natural surroundings to bolster our economy in more ways than just tourism. Not only do our amazing vistas and 1880s period authentic architecture and interiors and virgin natural settings make us desirable as a shooting location, we are populated with hardworking, creative, and resourceful citizens. After 20 years in the industry, I can confirm that people like that make great film industry employees. Even better, the industry hosts temporary high-paying jobs that would spike workers' income without taking them from the regular workforce. Having trained crew locally will prove extremely having trained crew locally will prove extremely attractive to film productions as well, allowing them to save resources and fulfill their local hire quota for their tax incentive. The state has a quota of a percentage of locals they have to hire in order to qualify for a cashback incentive. Fortunately, the most popular time for filmmaking in our region coincides with our shoulder seasons. This is ideal for our hotels, restaurants, and workers, providing income when our economy is most lean. It is our hope that as the film industry develops, more businesses will have the option to stay open year-round. The film office has a significant database of locations and services that we provide to producers to save them the effort of discovering all of this information on their own. As the film liaison, we can oversee filming activities and assure everyone's best interest. We have worked hard to streamline the permit process, which is a necessity when filming. Things as small as the weather can cause a complete change in a filming schedule. This saves the producer's time and frees town staff from having to spend valuable hours dealing with last-minute paperwork. In coming years, while we predominantly serve businesses and producers, we hope to engage with the local population to encourage interest and career motivations in the industry. Workshops and internships would be an ideal way to engage our school children that have an interest in pursuing a career in the arts. All of this is so near and dear to my heart. I just wanted to share some accomplishments that we've had since 2017. We've hosted nearly 30 productions, which in the years before that was much more scant. Now in the 1950s, we were a hotbed for film. We had Marilyn Monroe here, Clark Gable. And so we're not reinventing the wheel. What we're doing is we're just re-enlivening something that has been an asset for this region. And I couldn't be more excited to be a part of that. In 2021 alone, we brought in over 262 crew members. They spent over 32 nights. These numbers are numbers I gather and tabulate, but they're not exact. Most of the time I err on the the more conservative side. So there's a good chance that these numbers are actually higher. We created 51 jobs for locals. We brought $150,000 of spending in hotel rooms, 50,000 in restaurants, 45,000 in wages to locals, and 57 in location rental fees, be that a piece of property or a building or a permit, to bring up to about $312,000 total for 1 year. In January and February of this year, we brought almost that much in 2 months. I haven't done all of this year's numbers, so I didn't bring them. But that means that we brought nearly $30,000 in tax revenue alone. We're asking today for the 10,000. We will be very, very happy with the 7,500. There's a couple of projects that we'd really like to do, and the use of that money would go towards marketing and sustainability. I have been volunteering for 2 years. I have not once been paid. I'd like to be able to say that I can donate a lot more of my time or commit a lot more of my time. And in order for that, I would like to be able to figure out for the sustainability piece, a way to create a salary for myself and a part-time employee. I think if I had a part-time employee, that I would be able to spend a lot more time engaging producers and directors in other locales and have some of the paperwork and the smaller points taken care of. And the marketing, we've done all of this in the last couple of years without a website, without really much of a social media presence. It's been mostly word of mouth, which is great. It means that we're doing our job right. So when we have a producer come, they are very happy with our services because we try to go above and beyond, understanding that being a rural location, we don't quite have the infrastructure that a big town like Atlanta or Austin would. So we try and go above and beyond. And that has really garnered us a lot of attention and repeat customers, and having people tell other people that, yeah, you guys should really go and shoot in Silverton. They make it really easy and it's beautiful. And that's been lovely. Last year, we used our funding. This current year, we used our funding for some marketing materials. I had a photographer come and do a bunch of video pieces so we can actually prepare for next year, putting together a website and a social media presence. That's the first thing, is you've got to have the content. Over the next 5 years, I know you guys have it in the packet, but I'll do a brief overview. We'd like to transition to a membership organization. Differently than a normal membership organization, though, we plan on doing a commission-based donation, meaning that the businesses in town we don't expect them to give us anything unless we bring business to them. That'll be at a couple of different levels. 5% will get you on the list and 10% will get you featured on our website and our social media, which of course are the next thing. And then after that is Associated Film Commissioners International. It's an international film commission alliance where you get to go to location scout trade shows, and you get to put your location in front of people from all over the world, producers, directors, location scouts. They're all there to look at that. And it also lends a bunch of credibility, considering that we are a film commission in a very small place. We're not really heard of. So having that AFCI stamp on our name will help us a lot. And then I'd also like to approach Region 9 to see if we can't figure out a way to either partner with the Four Corners Film Office or have our own within that program that they have. And the next year, our second year, I would like to graduate to 2 employees if possible. Go to those trade shows. And then as a way to increase our revenue, I'd like to buy some equipment that I know that film productions tend to rent on a regular basis. I can get a set of 20 walkie-talkies for $6,000, but I can rent them for almost $200 a day. So that would be a way that we would eventually move towards being more self-sustaining and not depending just on that membership. And of course, town and government donations and grants. And then I'd like to start hosting as many workforce training as I can. The more film workers we have regionally, the more attractive we'll be. So it's a win-win. They get to make some money for a couple of days at a high paid day rate. And then we become more attractive because all of a sudden a film production doesn't have to fly in 10 extra people and pay for their hotels and their restaurants, their food. Of course, we like that too, but and then in 2025, of course, just more marketing and film publications. And then I'd like to try and see if I couldn't partner with the school and ATG, the theater group, and the gunfighters. We already have a loose partnership with the gunfighters and ATG, but I'd like to start getting into doing more theater and maybe combining it with filming theater. And then in 2026, I'd like to start bringing producers here, offering them a weekend away that they can come and take a look at all of our locations, and then do acting workshops and audition workshops. And then lastly, in our year 5, I'd like to do an artist in residence program and a scholarship fund. So the artist in residence program is something I know the creative district's already working on. And I think it would be neat to work with them. This year, we have 2 filmmakers coming at the end of this year or beginning of next year. We have 2 filmmakers. One is going to be here for 6 months, living in a local residence. They've rented a house and they will be shooting for 6 months straight. I think that's amazing. It's for Climb motorcycle gear. So they're going to be all over shooting and basing out of Silverton. My friend Simon, who was just here, has also bought a whole bunch of new camera equipment, and he wants to rent an apartment here for 6 months out of the year. And then on top of that, we've had Tucker Cocciarella, who is a great young filmmaker from Durango. He moved here permanently to have more film opportunities. And my friend Ellie, she works with me in costuming. She moved here permanently from Denver to have more film opportunities. And then lastly, we've got Levi Loki, who grew up here, but he's working in Telluride and Denver and all over the place as a film worker now, because of some opportunities he got in the film office through us for commercials. All right, I think I'm almost done. I know this is really going long.
We're kind of at time here.
Okay.
All
right.
Words.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the more the film office grows, the more our economy will grow, the more filmmakers move here, the more robust that industry will become. And do you guys have any questions for me?
I think there's so much potential here, and what you've already brought is really significant. I think hammering home the points about it's possible to have these things in the off-season, in the shoulder, revenue stream, businesses, and an employment opportunity for locals. I guess my one big question mark is, can the film office really be sustainable with a membership model with how small we are? Or is it going to continue to really struggle to survive with town support or seeking grants? I mean, I would encourage you to talk to the San Juan Development Association and Region 9 and, tap into some of the local economic groups that we have here. But I just think that's a question in my mind for your revenue sources, because you can't continue to work for free and be this great partner connecting everybody else that's making money from it and not funding yourself. And so is it sustainable with such a small business community that we have?
I think that's a great question. There's lots of ways we can diversify, be it workshops, equipment rental, that we can generate our own revenue, having the support from the town. I know that in some ways we're kind of like the Chamber of Commerce, where we're taking on a position that in other communities could be salaried through the government. So I think with government donations and grants and those other diversified income streams that we can come up with, it wouldn't be much of a problem, but just as an example, bringing in almost $320,000 last year, if we had gotten only 10% donation back from the businesses we supported, that 30,000 would be pretty substantial for us to be able to operate. Our overhead is extremely low. I work out of my living room. So, yeah. Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, that was gonna be similar to my question. Last year was a $5,000 request. This year's 10, just kind of as looking forward and thinking about other revenue streams and how else, like.
I think we've been proving ourselves for the last couple of years to the business community in Silverton. It was in its infancy and kind of an inkling. And I think with our numbers last year, we've finally carved out a position for ourselves in town. And I think just communicating that to the business owners, saying, hey, we want to be able to continue doing what we do to support the economy here and create jobs, but we will need to go off of the pilot method into a membership organization rather than just a straight up nonprofit.
Great, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Matt, would you promote Beth, the panelist, please?
So many friends who work film jobs now. They just make so much money.
And so Beth is our last presentation, and then I can go over the 5 organizations that are not present here that are happy with the Finance Committee recommendations. And then we can talk about all the applications. Got a little system for that, so it's exciting.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Hi, Beth.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Gloria, I feel like you were just about to say something and I got like kicked over to panelists. So was there something I should know?
Nope, you're good to go.
Okay, wonderful. You know, I'm going to share my screen if you all can just hang out with me for a second. Okay. So no, thank you all for letting me speak to you today. I'm here representing San Juan Development Association. Very happy and excited to be recommended as a partner organization, hopefully for the future with the town of Silverton. I think San Juan Development has done a lot of really great things over the past couple of years, and we are a small organization, so I am the only paid staff at this moment, part-time in my role. But I say we a lot because I have a board that is absolutely amazing, and I could not do it without their guidance and support. So just a refresher for those that may not be as familiar with San Juan Development Association as others, also known as SJDA. We're really the only economic engine here in Silverton and San Juan County, not only supporting economic diversification, but also community and housing development, and really creating partnerships, collaboration, and trust between our local businesses, nonprofits, and government entities in order to support our own community development. I've been with the organization for over 1.5 years already, and I think within that time, it's been pretty significant what we've been able to develop. We've had 2 businesses that have increased our economic diversification come to San Juan County. We've had 20 small business consultations, 3 different workshops, and we do have a microloan program for businesses looking to either start up or grow their organizations. And right now we have 6 active microloans with Silverton and San Juan County businesses. In terms of housing, we were awarded the CHAFA Technical Assistance Grant with the town of Silverton through our application. Also was awarded $200,000 of grant to support affordable housing development in Annville, which we will see going up soon, which is exciting. And I also serve regionally as a board member for Housing Solutions in order to support San Juan County and Silverton residents' voice in creating affordable housing. Broadband's an important topic to all of us, as we've all been affected in that one way or another. So we have identified and brought in an ISP that has recently built out fiber within the town. Also, I am serving on Region 9's broadband infrastructure grant, which they have just put a grant out for about $68 million for regional broadband efforts, which includes the development of fiber access into Silverton and San Juan County. And then also working on leading the redundancy of fiber from Ophir so that we can have an actual redundant fiber line into town. And some other work within community development, active and part of the management team during the Compass project over the last almost 2 years. Had a number of nonprofit coaching sessions. We do operate a co-working space, so people have the ability to come and use that as they need. And also working on a regional high alpine roadmap group with other county representatives that helps us understand what we want to do in the future for our high alpine lands that are shared between some of our counties. So just at the bottom, I want to highlight the amount of funding that San Juan has brought in just the last year and a half. So this is through a variety of different grants, both through different Colorado state agencies, foundations and organizations to help support any of these projects. So again, thank you for your recommendation for moving us into partnership and for any of the financial supports you're able to give. And I'm happy to answer any questions or comments that you have at this time.
Thank you, Beth.
Good.
It's very clear and helpful. Good way to leverage $10,000.
Great. Well, thank you so much again.
Awesome. Thank you. And we do have Powerhouse here as well to answer any questions on their application if you had. I just want to make sure you're the only one standing. So I want to make sure that we get to you.
Thanks for being here, Helen.
Sure. Yeah, come on up.
Yeah, I'm Hillary Cable. I'm here representing the Silverton Powerhouse. Available to answer any questions you have about our application for funding. We asked for funding to create an event around a speaker series. We want to attract some speakers to come and talk about cool things.
I think when the finance committee met, we all talked about really supporting some of the great things that were happening out there. And just the energy that seemed to be building around what was happening at the Powerhouse. I think our recommendation came from the idea that we could support just the 4 seasonal speakers that they had proposed and kind of use that as seed money to get started and kind of have a proof of concept and see how you guys do with that and executing that series and go from there. So I think, the finance committee had a lot of conversations around all of these groups because you have some that have, long-term documented success and long-term kind of things that they can show they've done or short-term things that they've contributed. And obviously, when we're thinking about this, it wasn't just like how many dollars do they bring to Silverton, but what kind of community benefit do they bring? How do they serve a local community? All that. So that was kind of the background around why the finance committee was recommending the 3,500 is to give you kind of that seed to start the first series.
So actually I have 5,500.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
We are greatly appreciative of that. Yeah.
Any questions?
My only question for Powerhouse was just, I appreciate that your request is so contained and it's a really nice package. It's like, this is for a speaker series, so we can easily, see that come to fruition and assess its success or, are the events well attended? I think that is a really nice little gift for us to consider. And at the same time, I know there's so much going on at the Powerhouse and there is a lot of energy happening out there. And I'm not making any requests to change what you put before us, but I just was wondering if, like, are there other things happening at the Powerhouse that are needing funding, or like, what are the other funding sources that support that huge diverse variety that you have going on out there?
Absolutely. All of our artists pay rent out there, and that supports the rent for the building and maintaining that in that way and keeping it as a studio space, a maker space for us. And so we want to create events that will help support those artists and bring awareness to what they're doing and to their businesses and things. And does that answer the question?
Yeah, great. Got it. So it's kind of the idea of like getting the more creative we can be with getting people sort of into that space, the more sort of accessibility it makes the artists that are investing in the rent and the space to be out there.
Yeah. And I think
like a showcase for them. Yeah. Okay, great. No, I appreciate that answer. Thanks.
Yeah. What other questions do you guys?
All right.
Thank you for your time.
And then I do want to recognize we do have Margot online as well for the scheduling application here, and she has had her hand raised, so wanted to promote her to panelist real quick. Hello, Margot, you've been promoted to panelist. And we can't see or hear you. There you go.
Okay. Is now better. Gloria, thank you. I want to thank all of you for actually the service you do as trustees and for taking the time to consider all these. And it was so interesting hearing everyone's presentation. Silverton Ski Joint doesn't have a presentation tonight. We have written out for the trustees given you, we hope, the numbers that you asked for in terms of how much we got in the way of donations, our expected grants, etc. But I want you to know that I'm here in order to answer any questions that you have.
Thanks, Margot. I did have a question. This is Dana. I was just trying to kind of follow the numbers from the budget that you guys shared with us for the packet, along with what you've raised so far. So I guess I was just a little bit confused about the totals for both the predicted revenue and the projected budget cost. So like, if I assume that you guys are expecting $33,000, that's what your letter was indicating. I think you had raised 14,750 so far. You're expecting potentially money from San Miguel, money from the Western Community the fund of $5,000, and then $10,000 from Tourism Board. I think that was a total of $33,000 that you expect to get from donations and fundraising. Is that right?
It's money we have received from donations to this date, and what we expect in the way of promised grants or possible grants. It's a projection, but it does not include, so I would say kind of up to now. Yeah, there we go.
All right, that's super helpful. And then, so I was taking that number and then adding on what you anticipate from beer garden sales, what you anticipate from registration fees, what you anticipate from soft goods sales. And to me, that added up to around 61,000 for what you anticipate, both with what you've already collected and what you anticipate. And so I guess I'm just struggling with the ask of the town being 15,000.
I'm confused, Dana, my job is fundraising, but where are you seeing these numbers?
So I was looking at the town of Silverton 501c3 request 2023. It was a budget, I think, that went to the finance committee, and it had
What you're looking at.
it had like the film fundraiser, we expect 4,000, the program income anticipated from beer garden sales, 14,000, corporate support. It basically, I think it was the Silverton ski touring budget.
I think what you're misunderstanding here is when you're looking at total revenue, you're not doing the total revenue minus what it costs to put on the event.
Well, I guess I'm looking at what I think the budget is. The budget I have in front of me shows the organizational revenue and then the organizational expenses and what you predict the cost of the event to be. And I was just comparing it to the expected revenue. I guess I don't know how else we're supposed to make this discussion or determination.
Okay, it looks like, if you look at these, it would look like projected revenue minus total organizational budget would be $10,000 is I think what we're saying, right?
I think so. I was just, if you go off of, do you know the document I'm referring to? Do you
I'm looking at it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So if you have just what was presented to us, the total revenue was 67,700. That's what you projected. And then the total organizational budget, which I understand to be the cost of the event. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the difference between those, yes, is about $10,000. You're anticipating $10,000 more in revenue than what the event will cost.
We certainly hope that will be the case. But of course, a lot of that, you'll see a great deal of the money that comes in here is, for instance, beer garden sales, $14,000. That doesn't happen until February when the event happens.
Right.
So just to let you know that we don't have the money. Yes, that's our budget, but we need to get the part of the revenue that isn't included in that $10,000. Do you see what I'm saying? Am I making sense to you?
Kind of. I understand how you're thinking about it. Yes.
Is there a different way to think about it?
Well, I guess I'm struggling with the ask of the town being what it is, considering that you project that the event will make enough in revenue to cover the cost of the event.
Well, I'm not sure I have a quick answer for you on that, Dana, but I do know that our event doesn't bring in a lot of extra money. We hope it will at some point. We hope we will have 20 grand to start off during 2024, but that's not been the, we've had, and I'm a fundraiser, I'm not treasurer, I'm not even a board member. So yes. I don't have access to our checking account and that, though I do have confidence that all of that is run as it should be. But I think that from what I've seen, we had some overage at the end of last year. We gave away a scholarship, and we had some that's been put towards this year's events, towards, for instance, creating soft goods we could then sell at the movie fundraiser. So there's some give and take here, but the bottom line is that I think the kind of math you're doing is not math that will work to put on the event this year for 2023.
Okay, well, I appreciate you being here.
I also want to say that this has always been a volunteer-run event, and Pete Meisel started it, more than a dozen years ago as a winter fundraiser for the town, and that's what it still is. This is a winter event designed to help Silverton through the anemic winter economic season. So I think that it's not inappropriate for us to ask the town to give us all they can in the means of financial help. And we go all out too, doing our part to raise money for this event. But it's a whole lot to ask.
Thanks, Margot.
All right.
There's some questions. I hope I was able to answer your question, because really, here where we're looking at this are revenue things, corporate support and individual support based on previous years. That's our donations.
Yeah.
Program income from beer garden sales, that doesn't happen until the event occurs. Film release fundraiser, we did not make $4,000. And that is, that's included in that donation thing. We didn't make anything like that. Registration fees, we will get those registration fees if we can offer a large purse. And we will have that kind of support coming in from out of state. Really, it's a world-class event. We have elite teams, which starting last year especially, came from states outside of Colorado to compete on our course, which is unique in its scenic beauty. It's a straight course, which is particularly safe for the horses. So it's popular for the cowboys to bring their horses up here. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Margot. Appreciate it. I'm going to keep us moving because I know we've got another meeting starting here in 5 minutes, which we might be a little late for, but thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks, Dana.
Thank you.
All right, so I did want to point out, so we are waiting for Sally to reconnect. She had to restart her router. So that takes a little bit, I know. So I do want to point out that there are 5 organizations that you're not going to hear from tonight. They are the Farmers Market, Silverton Single Track Society, Senior Center, Theater Group, and Center for Snow and Avalanche. I spoke to them all on the phone and they were all in agreement with what the Finance Committee had recommended. And we're ecstatic. I wanted to say that the KSJC pulled their application for the shuttle funding and would just like the funding for the PA system. And Danny just emailed me. He's not able to get on, but he wanted to stress that he would share that with other organizations, that PA system. And then there are, so ski touring. Okay, so those are the 5 organizations. And then you've got Powerhouse as well. So I think we've kind of heard from everyone except for those 5 organizations, which we're happy with the recommendation. So from here, what I'm asking you all is that we have the recommendations from the Finance Committee, and I'm asking if there's any deviations from that recommendation that you all would like to discuss. If any trustee has basically, I'm going to budget for what the Finance Committee put in if we don't have any other kind of discussion items after hearing everyone. So I would open it up for open discussion. And if you want, I can narrow us in again.
As you had to do in the finance meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, is it appropriate to ask
Sally is
from the finance meeting? So
we talked for a long time. We can provide clarification what we discussed. Sure. Yeah.
The electronic records for the clinic.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like that seems like a way to bring them into the future. I think that I hear you with some of the concerns about the longevity, but I also think not having these sort of resources will be detrimental to attracting the next If that makes sense. And so I guess I just would understand, like, and I guess what I was asking earlier was I see this like ER startup fees and annual cost 4,300. But we're essentially just taking out the 1,800 for so the other, so 2,500 is the annual fees. Okay.
Yeah, I think that was the conversation. Yeah. I mean, Jeff, you're absolutely right. We had a lot of discussion on it. I was obviously quite opinionated on the matter because I was closest to it. In just having done the community health assessment and interviewed a variety of people. I think there were a couple things that stood out. And I think Megan answered them well with the board report, but the clinic had hired a consultant this summer who gave them recommendations of some free options. A couple other people I know had recommended some free options to them, and they were choosing to, not use those options. And I think Megan's points were valid, is that some of those options may not be the best in the long run, but I still think there are 5-year sustainability concerns for the clinic. And the board of trustees may decide that it's important to us to keep this partner operating as they limp along, right? I mean, Mercy has not committed to any additional funding for the nurse practitioner position. It isn't clear if they have liability insurance. They have lost multiple members of their board recently. And so I think I just have a lot of concerns about the organizational stability. And so as a town or as a board, our board, it's not a lot of money that they're asking for. And so we could just in good faith say, you know what, we need this organization to continue to exist because it does serve a really important role in the community. I think my concern is I would like to have a little bit more transparency and accountability. And that I think goes towards a lot of this, but for the clinic in particular, I just think there's several red flags about the organization's operations. And does that contain any liability for the town? If we're partnering in some way, probably giving them $1,800 doesn't do that. But I think it's a super important organization, and I think the function they serve is very important, and I have a lot of concerns. I don't think that helps a lot, but.
What if I switch on this? I'm just thinking through the night and how to facilitate this, and that we don't have a full board here, which is kind of a disservice, to try and make this decision. So if we put this on the agenda for the 14th to discuss, and like I was going to present to you guys, if we want to stay with the finance recommendations, or if there are any deviations, we could discuss this and then formally adopt it. Would that work for you all? And then we could move to the finance committee meeting,
I think
to the special meeting.
I think that works too, because we just were given a bunch of new information. It's not, I feel like I'm
digest it.
Yeah,
And then the other board members can watch this as well and get up to speed. Does that work better?
That feels better.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good to me because I have a page of notes, I think.
Yeah, why don't we digest this?
So
for
great,
the night?
sounds good.
And I'll put it as an agenda item on the 14th as part of our budget adoption or a part of our budget notice.
That'd be great. Can I ask for a little bit more information from either the town or ski joring? I was thinking back, and I wasn't a member of the board, but I was thinking back to the meeting about ski joring and the movie they made and how it was supposed to be a huge promotional piece and all this stuff. And I was wondering, did we ever answer the questions from the meeting a year ago, which were, does the town get to have this movie?
Okay.
They had the language that was used a year ago was, this is our big fundraising piece to wean us off of town support. And so I don't really feel like those kinds of questions have sufficiently been answered of what happened to the movie and what kind of fundraising did they do with it? And what was the investment of it? I mean, Molly was grilling them a year ago, and I just was wondering if there was any.
All right, we can put some together for that. Yeah. All right. So with that new direction, I guess we would be adjourning this work session. It is 6:33. And then I'll turn it over to
Do you
Sally.
want me? Okay. Do you want me to start the the special meeting, or do we want to take a little break here?
If we could just take a 2-minute break on our end to go to the bathroom and grab some pizza, that would be awesome. So we can
nice. Yeah, let's.
reconvene at 6:35.
Great. Okay, so I see that it's 6:36. Do we have enough people that have this meeting? Why?
We're just waiting for Gloria to come back.
So all the trustees are here that have been here. We're just waiting for Gloria.
Oh, okay, sorry, I couldn't see everybody.
I think they're just going at it backwards. We could overestimate it. Should have done an underestimate.
But still, doesn't make sense.
Sally, whenever you're ready.
Okay, it is, we will now convene a special meeting of the Silverton Board of Trustees. The time is 6:37. And I believe we need to start with a roll call.
Sure thing. Trustee Davis. Here. Trustee Crainer.
Here.
Trustee Harper is not present right now. Trustee Bierman.
Here.
Trustee George is not present right now. Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Here.
Okay. And Mayor Furman is not present with us tonight. And so we do have a quorum with 4 out of 7 attending.
All right. Go technology. This is a win for technology. So tonight, the first item on our agenda is a public hearing regarding use by special review application to allow a single family residence and accessory dwelling unit in the economic development or ED district for the property located at lots 7 through 8, block 31, the applicant CNG Partners LLC. And so since this is a special hearing,
You promote Katie.
I will give a quick, correct me if I'm wrong at any point here, Gloria, but I'll give a quick overview of how this procedure works. And then we'll get started. So we'll start, I think Katie's here to kick it off for us to summarize this project. Then we'll hear from the applicant. After that, we will receive public comment. We'll close the public hearing, and then that will allow for the deliberation and the decision on the part of the town board. Oh, and Clayton's here as well, so stop me when I get off track. Does that work to open up? Okay, cool. So then I'm going to kick it over to you, Katie.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm just going to go through this pretty briefly because I know you saw the staff report that summarized the item. This first one before you is for a new single-family residence and accessory dwelling unit. It is within the within the Economic Development District, located on Mineral Street. So project location, you are looking at Mineral Street and 11th Street with the two parcels that you can see in the image that are outlined in the purplish color. 5,000 square foot lot. The town rezoned them to ED district in March earlier this year. So these two lots are currently zoned ED based on town approval a few months ago. The applicant is before us tonight with a few different uses that are proposed. Their main transportation facility is allowed by right in the ED district. And so we're not looking for any discussion on that transportation facility because it is allowed by right. What's before you is the single family residence and the accessory dwelling unit. And you can see there on the existing parcel, you have a shed, and then you have down here the other structure, which is located along the alley. And I'll get into a little bit better site plan here in a minute. So again, ED district transportation facility is permitted by right. Single family residence is a use subject to review within the ED district, as is the ADU. So the two things before the Board of Trustees is, are you okay with the single family residence in the ED district and also an ADU on this property within the ED district? Staff did want to note that the ED district purpose statement does say that single family is a use supported within the ED district. So that is in the actual purpose statement of the ED district. Proposed setbacks are all in compliance as they're required to be. The only exception to that is that the existing barn that is located over here is 1 foot from the property line. That is legal non-conforming. It is allowed to remain as it is for the basically reuse of this building to become the single family residence. If for some reason they found they couldn't use this structure anymore and it was going to be taken down, any new structure would have to be built in compliance with the setback. So okay as it is, but if anything changed, it would have to be built in compliance with setbacks. You can see there's a lot of parking proposed on the property. As far as the other structure, the applicant is proposing basically garage parking inside of part of the building, along with the operation of the office for their transportation facility. And then the proposed ADU is proposed upstairs of that building. And that is all in compliance with the accessory dwelling unit requirements. I'm not going to go through all of these from tonight for you. I know you are aware of them. This is just the bulleted point of notes from the town code of what the town requires for accessory dwelling units. The proposed application is in compliance with all of these, including the size of the proposed square footage for the units, the dimensional standards, and things like that. So happy to go over any more of them in detail or answer any questions that you have, but I won't read through every bullet point for you right now. Next point to make for you is Town of Silverton Compass Master Plan. This red asterisk is approximately where this property is. You can see it's located within the neighborhood mixed use on that new Compass Master Plan future land use framework map. And with that, the town has not, or staff has not received public comments at this point in time. And so I don't have anything to add right now for public comments, and they have been received as of today. The Planning Commission at their specially held meeting last week on November 1st, they did review the application materials. I apologize, I wrote in here public comment, but none was actually received for this item. That they did recommend that the Board of Trustees go ahead and approve the request for the use by special review application to allow the single family residence and accessory dwelling unit within the ED district on this property. That motion did pass by the Planning Commission unanimously.
And staff is recommending the same. Staff does not have any conditions that we are proposing at this time for you, just a straight out approval. But obviously happy to hear your discussion and thoughts along with if there's any public comment tonight. So I will turn it back over to you, Sally.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Katie. So now we'll move to hear from the applicant. Do we have the applicant on tonight?
Matt, can you check our attendees, please?
I guess we should just see if the applicant wants to provide any input here.
There we go.
Hi,
Okay, great. Hey,
can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Yep.
Okay, my screen just went away, so I can't see you guys, but I'm not sure if Nick Croce's on the call. He is the owner of C&G. And I'm Ashley Clemens. I'm the architect where we helped them put together this application. And thank you, Katie, so much for such a thorough presentation. I don't have a whole lot extra to add. If you guys have any questions or concerns, I'm happy to answer any concerns you have. So just, yeah, thank you so much for hearing our reviewing our project.
okay, town trustees, any questions here?
And Nick is on the line as well.
Or Nick,
Hey,
do you have
everyone.
anything to add?
I'm here. Yeah. I do not have too much to add. Thank you, Katie. I think you did Katie did a great job of hitting all the bullet points. So yeah, I mean, if you guys have any questions for us, we'd be happy to address them.
I had a procedural question for Katie. Thinking about future land use and also kind of streamlining our processes as a goal as part of our master plan. It strikes me that this group first had to go through the rezoning process, and now that it is rezoned, they're having to go through the use subject to review process because it was rezoned. Am I correct to assume or think that if we moved forward with the land use framework in the master plan, that this would have potentially saved a step for this applicant or future applicants and potentially made the process a little bit more streamlined?
It's a good question. It actually wouldn't have, because the Compass Master Plan is only a guiding document. You still have to follow the code requirements. So what it comes down to in this case is if the town code allowed single family residences and accessory dwelling units by right in the ED district, then it wouldn't need to come before you. But with that requirement in the town code, it does have to come before you. So it still would have had to be rezoned, and it still would have needed a use by special review for this zone district.
Okay.
Yep. Good
Thank
question.
you.
Yeah.
Okay. If there aren't any other comments or questions, I think we can move on to public comment. So at this time, we'll open up for public comment on this application. And Matt, I might need your help on this one because I can see. Yep. So I don't see any online public comment. Is there anyone in person?
No, in person.
All right. So seeing no public comment, we will close the public comment and move on to trustee discussion.
I mean, it seems like they're ticking all the boxes. And so I feel like I don't see any red flags with this one.
Agreed. Sorry, you guys. Actually, can I go back and ask Clayton a question about the procedure here? Do I need to close the public hearing before we have trustee discussion and decision making?
Yeah, typically at the end, you'll just when you close it for public comment, after you hear all the staff report and applicant report, that can act as you closing the public hearing if that's, the last step in your process, which it typically is. And now you can go into discussion. So you can make it more formal if you want, but I think what you did was fine. Just closing it for public comment, stating that you're going to be only looking at the information that was presented to you during the public hearing and then going into discussion.
Okay, great. So now we'll use the information presented in the public hearing to have our discussion. Thanks. So sorry, Jeff and Dana, back to, I only had one question on, for discussion, and that was about the ADU. I remember when we passed the ADU ordinance, and it may have been one of your bullet points, Katie, but I didn't quite read fast enough, I think. One of the requirements for ADU had to do with the occupancy and the dwelling of like a primary dwelling, and the ADU being occupied for a certain amount of time so that it doesn't become a short-term rental. Yeah, okay, great. There's the list. Do we need to consider the occupancy or the dwelling duration on this application?
As long as you're planning on having them follow what the code requires, and I can pull up the specific code language here in a second also to help, but as long as they're requiring exactly what the code requires, I wouldn't recommend a special condition to reiterate it, so.
Right, okay.
It seems like
So,
bullet
yeah,
Q
sorry.
and bullet Q and bullet R on page 10 or 52 of our packet. Those might help with your question, Sally.
Thanks. I am stuck in a shared screen situation here, but I totally remember going through pages of the applications.
Yeah.
Great. That's good. I'm good if that's satisfied.
So
Does someone want to?
A lease term is a minimum of 6 months, if that helps.
But an ADU lease term is a minimum of 3 months. It looks like.
And then, yes.
If the primary dwelling is occupied with a 6-month lease.
Yeah.
And we already have caps on vacation rentals in the ED zone anyways, right? I think BP is.
Do we cap those in the ED zone?
I was just exploring this, and in the R1, R2 and ED zone, they are capped.
Yeah.
But in BP zone, they're not.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay.
That's good.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion? Maybe we can go back to that page now, Katie.
I move that the recommended conditions set forth in the November 1st, 2022 staff report be taken, and the Board of Trustees hereby approve the request for the use of a special review application to allow a single family residence and accessory dwelling unit within the ED district for the property located on lots 7 and 8, block 11, Silverton.
Second.
Not many choices here.
It's like rock, paper, scissors.
Trustee Davis.
Okay,
Yes.
we'll do a roll call.
Sorry. Trustee Davis.
Yes.
Trustee Kranier.
Yes.
Trustee Bierman.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Motion passes 3 yeses, 3 absent, or 4 yeses, 3 absent.
Okay, so that wraps up item number 1 on our special meeting agenda. We'll now move on to item number 2.
Thank you,
which
guys.
is also a public hearing. Oh yeah, sorry. Thanks, you guys. Thanks
Thank
for
you so
being on
much.
tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 2, which is also a public hearing regarding use by special review for a use by special. Oh, sorry, that's a little awkward there. By special review for an accessory dwelling unit in the R2 district. A use by special review for an avalanche hazard development permit to allow an accessory dwelling unit within the avalanche hazard overlay district, red zone, and a use by special review for an avalanche hazard development permit to allow a single family dwelling unit within the avalanche hazard overlay district, red zone, for the property located at lots 13 through 14, block 15, the applicant Casey Clifford and Miles LaHill. So again, we will go through the same protocols, and I'll turn it over to you, Katie.
Thank you, Sally. And Casey Clifford should be on the video or on the meeting virtually too when you get to the applicants part of the item.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yes, so I know there is probably.
I'm so confused.
What's that? Sorry.
No, sorry, we're just trying to find you in the packet. We're there.
Okay, well, and I do apologize. I know that there is a couple of different changes within this property over the last few days, and I know you weren't notified until I believe today. So I wanted to kind of clearly go through this no matter what, but I also am going to go extra clear to make sure you're aware it is a little bit different than the original staff report and review that went to the Planning Commission. So you'll see in your staff report that the application originally was also applying for a bed and breakfast. The applicant has withdrawn for this property, the bed and breakfast request. However, because it's in the avalanche district, they still need to have permission from the Board of Trustees to have a use by special review for that avalanche hazard overlay for both a single family residence and a detached ADU. And then also within the zone district, the ADU requires a use by special review. So there's still 3 items within this property that you're reviewing tonight. 3 separate motions will need to be made, and we'll get to that as we go forward. So again, I apologize, staff didn't have time to rewrite an entire staff report and remove the bed and breakfast, but I'm hoping this will be clear enough for you as I go through it. Okay. So this property here is located on the corner of Cement Street, and you have East 13th Street also running along it. Cement Street is, as you're aware, the undeveloped right of way within this in this vicinity. So that is going to come up throughout this discussion a little bit with some special conditions. The property itself is zoned R2 district. And you saw in your staff report also the same images that have showing what property or what zone districts are located around this within the neighborhood also. And then again, avalanche hazard overlay, and I'll get to some zoomed in maps with that also. So again, purpose of your review here tonight is year-round single family residence within the avalanche hazard district, accessory dwelling unit within the R2 district, and a detached ADU within the avalanche hazard district. So going down into the R2 district, and this is what you're looking at as far as the accessory dwelling unit. And if the board is okay approving a accessory dwelling unit within the R2 multiple family residential district. So as you can see and saw in the code, accessory dwelling units are a use subject to review, which is why it's before you. The proposed single family residence and ADU staff does feel meets the purpose statement of the R2 because it's providing an area for multifamily and single family dwelling units. Based on definitions within the code, an accessory dwelling unit is essentially a single family dwelling that's not considered density. Obviously, you still are looking at it as far as parking and impacts, which we'll get into. So Silverton Compass Master Plan, you're going to start seeing this on every slideshow from us because we do like to reflect where the town is going with their land use framework. So again, this property is neighborhood mixed use. So you can see the approximate area on that with that red asterisk. The neighborhood mixed use is defined as being similar to the current economic development district, but it would include all housing types above, as well as triplexes, multifamily, such as 4 to 8 unit buildings, creative spaces, and some commercial unit uses. So based on your Compass Master Plan or the town's Compass Master Plan, it basically is stating that this area should include all housing types along with some higher density uses potentially. Again, strictly speaking, property R2 district right now, not getting into the avalanche hazard district at this point yet. So just not going to read all this. Use by special review is outlined in Silverton Municipal Code. This staff went through in your site staff report, and we did review all of the items to make sure everything was done correctly with the application, and everything was submitted accurately for this applications before you tonight. With regards to the accessory dwelling unit itself, pulling out a couple of the different things to think about for the R2 district is it does provide another long-term housing unit which is an express need within the Compass Plan. It's proposed to comply with size restrictions and occupancy limits. All dimensional requirements of R2 district will be complied with. The application materials note modest minor cabins, and they will comply with the design standards. There was a little bit of frustration expressed at the Planning Commission that specific architectural design has not been provided or elevations at this point in time. Technically, the applicant is not necessarily required to provide that. They're looking to see if this use would be allowed within this district on this property. If it is, then they will go ahead and make that design, and it will get reviewed by the town staff at building permit review, and town staff will be responsible for ensuring that all design standards are complied with. The utility designs are in compliance with code, and the ownership and use also shall be complied with, which the application materials do show compliance with all of that. Wanted to focus in a little bit on parking for this application. So within the code, an ADU shall have no off-street parking requirements. So in other words, the town doesn't require on-site parking requirements for an ADU, but the town does require an applicant to note availability of 2 parking spaces on a street adjacent to the parcel. And the applicant has done that, noting that 2 spaces could be provided on Cement Street. So due to the kind of little trickier situation with this being undeveloped right away, the Public Works did weigh in on this, and they stated that the proposed locations are completely adequate to propose. However, following the town requirements, the applicants would be required to design, construct, and potentially maintain the section of right-of-way up to where these parking spaces are going to be provided in front of this lot. So that is a specific condition that is being suggested for the Board of Trustees, and that would be required to be completed prior to certificate of occupancy. The town has their street standards, which would be complied with, but that does not require specific design approval necessarily from the town. It will be primarily worked out during design period with the Public Works Director. And he is aware of this. This was kind of his support to ensure that the Board of Trustees considers this, as they are in other parts of town where access on undeveloped right-of-ways is being proposed. So that is one condition that you've seen in your staff report being recommended. So moving on to the Avalanche Hazard Overlay District. Now you're looking at this district for both the single family residence and the ADU. Okay, so for this district, you have proposed single family residence is permitted by right within the underlying zoning district. And you also have the application materials noting that the structures will be constructed based on recommendations provided within the avalanche hazard mapping analysis. This is going to be referenced a little bit more, so I'm going to keep moving and just note that essentially the purpose staff found this purpose statement of the avalanche hazard overlay district is being met with the suggested conditions in your report. So moving into the avalanche hazard overlay district, the application materials initially noted that this was blue zone, and town staff originally, based on the town map, also considered this blue zone. You can see the red though does cut borderline through it, and it was a little tricky to see it. However, when we reviewed the report that was submitted by the applicant, the red line does go up more through the site a little bit. And so that is why we designated it as staff as red zone. With that said, because we received the engineering report, it has recommendations that are referenced. The applicant has met requirements based on going through the red zone and what needed to be submitted to be reviewed. So I did want to explain why we changed this to red zone, even though in your application materials from the applicant, you saw blue zone. And again, it's just a little bit, but staff also wanted to note that the proposed parking is going to be within the red zone also, just to reinforce that red zone a little bit more. So next up, we have that all parcel or all structures will need to meet the dimensional standards of the R2 district. That is being proposed and will be required to be complied with if this is approved and if and when building permits are submitted. So staff isn't suggesting any more supplemental requirements or restrictions on that part of the code. Okay, so avalanche hazard assessment and mapping report included in your packet, and not going to go through the whole thing, but I want to note is that the report itself obviously recognizes this is within an avalanche district. It did note that there are mitigation methods which would allow development, and there are specifically 9 recommendations. The applicant has stated that they will follow those recommendations. Staff has suggested a few other conditions to ensure that those are required to be complied with. And that also part of it, the report, one of the recommendations includes that a structural engineer with experience in applying dynamic and static snow and avalanche loads must be retained to design any structures to resist design snow and avalanche loads. Because of that, staff did recommend a condition specifically stating that the construction plan shall show full compliance with the recommendations of the assessment, including being designed by a structural engineer. The applicant has been completely okay with these suggested conditions, but again, they're up for discussion by the Board of Trustees. That's why I wanted to focus in a little bit so you're aware of where they're coming from and why we're proposing them, but obviously up for discussion on your end. So again, avalanche district within the report, it does have recommendations that and the applicant has stated that they will follow. The town has also staff has suggested a special condition that the town's consulting engineer review the construction plans for both a single family house and or ADU if they're approved. We feel like that just gives the town a little bit more security in what they're reviewing with the building permit plans because of needing that extra expertise reviewing the avalanche report that was submitted. So basically your building permit would get submitted with construction plans designed by the special engineer. And then we're also recommending a condition that the town building department send this to the town's consulting engineer and that they also review the plans and the avalanche report, just to make sure everything is in sync. Okay, so kind of not going to read through all the conditions, but as you're aware from other applications you've seen in town, you do require an indemnification agreement. That is required to be notarized, and the applicant did submit that as property owners. When if this moves forward and they construct the accessory dwelling unit, when they rent that accessory dwelling unit out, any tenant in the future will be required to also submit a notarized indemnification agreement and also submit that to the town to show that they understand where they're renting. So that is a code requirement. So, but we did kind of suggest an extra condition just to make sure that in the future, everybody is aware that that was a code requirement. So in the staff report for the Planning Commission, which was included in your packet, there were there was one public comment received opposed to the bed and breakfast itself. And then 2 more were received and mentioned to the Planning Commission at their meeting, along with a couple of comments that were received verbally at the meeting. Overall, though, I wanted to note these public comments. I'm not sure if we have anybody on the meeting tonight, and hopefully if they are, they'll speak again. The specific comments really related to bed and breakfast and which is not part of the discussion anymore. They did also, however, note that they were concerned about full-time residences within the ADU, within the avalanche hazard overlay. So that is still a little bit connected, or that is connected still to the applications before you. Increased travel hazards, traffic hazards. It kind of comes down to the Board of Trustees if they feel like a single family and accessory dwelling unit is increasing that traffic and density too much for the neighborhood. So Planning Commission reviewed the application materials at their special meeting last week. They did, as I said, listen to a few public comments, and they made, based on staff recommendations with the bed and breakfast before them at the time, 2 of their motions revolved around the bed and breakfast. The Planning Commission recommended to deny the request for the bed and breakfast establishment within the R2, and also to deny that request within the avalanche hazard. Again, that's off the table right now. So moving on to the more relevant Planning Commission motions here. And again, the Planning Commission did not know that this was going to be withdrawn at the time, which is why everything in here is still related to that bed and breakfast. However, with regard to what you have before you tonight, the Planning Commission did recommend 4-2 that the use by special review application would allow an ADU within the R2 be approved. And they also recommended that you approve the accessory dwelling unit within the avalanche hazard district. I want to note that the 2 who were opposed to this, it was because the motions were made in sync with 4 motions together in one vote. And the 2 who were actually opposed because they were in support of the bed and breakfast. So they were also in support of the accessory dwelling unit, but they weren't in support of the Planning Commission going forward with 4 motions at one time, in the 4 together as they were made. And Planning Commission added 1 more motion that is relevant tonight, and that is after their motions were to deny the bed and breakfast, then it was requested that they go ahead and forward you a vote on the single family residence itself. And so they did vote that you approve the request for the single family residence within the avalanche hazard overlay district. And that vote was made unanimously in support of the single family. So you do have, as a quick recap, Planning Commission is in support of all 3 motions before you tonight. The staff report and also the slides that I have, the next few, are going through the staff suggested conditions and staff suggested motions that you will need to make tonight. So again, you have 3 motions before you. I think I kind of went over everything. I'm not going to sit and read through them right now. I'll pull them up if and when you want me to, and then I'll pass it back over to you.
Okay, thanks, Katie. So that now it's time to hear if the applicant has anything they'd like to add. And I can look and see if the applicant is online or. Does anyone see comments from the applicant?
No.
Okay, then we will open the discussion up to public comment. So now if anyone from the public would like to comment.
None in
I'd
person.
like to hear it. And no one in person. And do we see any public comment online?
No, we do not.
If you would like to
Thanks,
make
Matt.
public comment, please use the raise hand button just to let them know.
Right, yep, good reminder. Thanks, Gloria.
But we're seeing none.
Okay, seeing none, we will close public comment and the public hearing portion of this and begin deliberation and decision making on the part of the trustees. So trustees, discussion, comments.
It feels like a relief that the bed and breakfasts are gone.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And that, because I saw public comment about the parking there. It's interesting that part about that John brought up about the right of way and having to build and maintain a small piece of right of way. Does that make it, it's interesting because like parking around town is pretty loose, but like that's important to put in as we're moving forward, as we go from project to project. And as we go to approve all these ADUs, like, do we keep track of the ADUs? Do they get taxed differently? Do they have 2 taps?
We do keep track of them. I would have to ask John how we do that. Matt, do you have an idea on how
I think that Bevan might have a spreadsheet, and it seems like similar to what Bill was creating spreadsheets for before he left.
Do they have like 1 or 2 taps and access to the dump? And like, how does all that?
That would be a John question.
I think it said in the code, they're supposed to have 2 taps.
In the
So-
code, and I remember when that came before us as an ADU discussion, that the owner was required to cover 2 taps for both structures, if I remember, that's memory. So Katie probably knows that code better, obviously, than I do, but.
Yeah, and I did ask John Seitz that question, and he and Bevan they've determined taps when an applicant submits the application right now.
It
so I
sort
don't
of
have
depends on the property as well.
It sounded like the circumstances on the property, correct? And how many taps exist currently and things like that.
I just wanted to say, Katie, thank you for just presenting such clear information from such a lot of information. So I think you keep us on track and well informed, and I appreciate you sifting through it for us.
Do you know Katie was my boss for a bunch of years?
Really?
What?
Yeah.
That is the best.
That was not a good job for me. I think I'm a lot better at this job. He was really good at his job back then. He was better than me.
It all comes full circle.
Full circle.
I had a small detail question about having the town's engineer review the plans as well before anything was constructed. Is that at the applicant expense or at the expense of the town?
I can weigh in to an extent. Right now, the town has pass-through fees that the code allows for through Public Works. So if that engineering review is connected into the Public Works part of the code language, it could get passed on to the applicant to pay for that review. So the town is looking at potentially bringing before you, staff is looking to bring before the Board of Trustees the option to see if you would support pass-through fees for other different things, which could be the engineer also. I'm not sure if Clayton knows if that Public Works language includes an engineer or just Public Works, but I think it does include an engineer.
I think it does.
Okay, so the town could choose to pass that cost of the engineering review to the applicant.
Well, and I know, Katie, you said that there was one comment about year-round resident, that there was some public comment concern about having year-round residences in the avalanche zone, but correct me if I'm wrong, and this might be a question for Clayton as well, as long as we have the indemnification notarized and signed, and as long as like all those legal ducks are in a row, it's really up to the applicant, the owner, and the tenant to make that determination of occupancy, right?
Correct. Yes, as long as they're meeting the code requirements with regards to residency and things.
Yeah, thank you. And Clayton, as long as we have that indemnification signed, that is what protects the town if we're authorizing this kind of development on these parcels.
Correct.
Thank you. So build at your own risk is basically.
I mean, hazards like 4 times a year.
Yeah.
That for that size, that sort of thing. So we have to make 3 different motions.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now to figure out which ones are which.
I second.
And I'm gonna make you make 3 because I let the planning commission get away with grouping them and it turned into a little bit of a chaotic mess way after the fact, I realized. So definitely separate your motions, please.
We're all about like organizational infrastructure here.
And Katie, that new thing about getting how you're saying that a tenant of the ADU will then also sign something saying they're in the avalanche district. So I remember we talked about that kind of just last meeting. So is that something that we've added since, or we're gonna?
That is in the code, so it's a requirement. I think the town should, as a separate discussion, maybe discuss how they're gonna start monitoring these a little bit better. It may be worth, like you said, if the town's tracking the ADUs on a spreadsheet, sending out an annual monitoring questionnaire to the owners and just saying who's living in there, who's renting it, how long, and getting those basic questions answered. And then you can ensure at that time that that tenant has also submitted the indemnification agreement. So it's on the property owner to do that. However, you always wonder, like, will people remember that when it comes down to it? So.
Yeah, and just making sure that, and I think Gloria brought this up in our last meeting, that that's on the property owner to submit that so that the town isn't potentially liable for the absence of monitoring that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, did I see, Katie, that somewhere in your presentation you had those suggested language for the motion? If we're there and we're ready to do that, we can
I think I found them.
Okay.
But please correct me if I'm reading the wrong one. I move that the recommended conditions set forth in the November 1st, 2022 staff report be taken, and that the planning commission hereby recommends the board of trustees approve with conditions the request for the use by special review application to allow an accessory dwelling unit within the R2 multiple family residential district for the property located at lots 17 through 18, block 15, Silverton.
Second.
Okay, Matt, roll call, please.
Okay, trustee Davis,
Yes.
trustee Krieger,
Yes.
trustee Bierman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yeses, 3 absent.
Okay, we'll go on to the
Okay.
next.
Okay, wait a minute. That was 17 through 18. Are we on that one? Lot 17 through 18. Are we having to do these all three separately, Katie?
So the three I have are like the ADU within the R2.
So
ADU
you only right
avalanche.
now are reviewing
13, 14.
lots 13 and 14.
You said,
Oh.
I think you said 13, 14.
You're gonna have 3 different public hearings still tonight, 2 more after this one.
So should we strike that vote and
Yeah, yep,
I think strike.
I was
strike that one.
the wrong one.
And if you can
It's
see.
still R2 district, still block 15.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I move to recommend,
Nice,
I
good
move that the
catch.
recommended conditions set forth in the November 1st, 2022 staff report be taken, and the planning commission hereby recommends the board of trustees approve the request for the use by special review application to allow a single family unit within the R2 multifamily residential district for the property 1314 block 15 in the red avalanche zone.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
trustee Davis?
Yes.
Trustee Krieger,
Yes.
trustee Bierman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
All right. The
Next motion.
amended motion passes 4 yeses, 3 noes.
No.
I think I'm
Thank
gonna
you.
screen and read it.
Confusing one.
So we have
So we have the,
3 motions for all 3 of these public hearings, right? Just so we're clear. Yeah. I know we're keeping them separate, but okay, I'll read it, but I'm gonna go up there. I don't trust where I have it in my packet. Okay. Thank you. I move that the recommended conditions set forth be taken and to approve with conditions the request for the use by special review application to allow an accessory dwelling unit within the R2 multiple family residential district for the property located at lots 13 through 14, block 15, Silverton.
can we add in the red district? Okay, second.
So did we add the red district or not
No.
in the red zone? We did not. Okay.
I don't think you need to because this one is just on the R2 district, and then you can add the red zone for the next one, which is within the avalanche district.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we're ready for a roll call then.
All right, trustee Davis.
Yes.
Trustee Green.
Yes.
Trustee Bierman.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yeses, 3 absent.
Gotcha.
Okay, great. So our third and our final motion on this particular application.
I can't read it from here.
I know we're a little short. I can read them really easily because I'm looking at the computer, but I also know that it's not typically the role of the facilitator, but I think it's still allowed. Okay, so the third motion is I move that the recommended conditions set forth be taken and to approve with conditions the request for the use by special review application for an avalanche hazard development permit to allow an accessory dwelling unit within the avalanche hazard overlay red zone for the property located at lots 13 through 14, block 15, Silverton.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Roll call.
Trustee Davis.
Yes.
Trustee Green.
Yes.
Trustee Bierman.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yeses, 3 absent.
I think, Sally, all you have to do is say, I will entertain a motion. That seems to be how I've heard it said at various county and town meetings.
Right. Right. And then you can just say so moved. That's exactly right. Okay, great feedback. So that concludes the let me get back here, see what we're concluding. That concludes our second public hearing of the evening, and we can now move on to the third public hearing. Use by special review for a use by special review for an accessory dwelling unit in the R2 district, a use by special review for an avalanche hazard development permit to allow an accessory dwelling unit within the avalanche hazard overlay district. And are we calling that blue zone or red zone for this one?
This is blue zone.
Well,
Blue zone.
okay, blue zone. And a use by special review for an avalanche hazard development permit to allow a single family dwelling unit within the avalanche hazard overlay district, blue zone, for the property located at lots 15 through 16, block 15, Silverton, Colorado. Applicant Sarah Rebeck.
Yeah, I saw 17, 18.
Okay, back to Katie.
I'm just pulling it up. So while I pull it up, I will explain a little bit to why you're reviewing each of these individually. And it is because they are separate owners, separate parcels. And basically they're they're kind of three different application requests within one application. But if you look at it as an overall application request with the 3 sub motions, if you didn't review, let's say you were like, okay, we just reviewed this and we know exactly what we're looking at. The applicant could come back technically, and any applicant, not just like this one, if this happened in the future, and say, well, they didn't give me the review that I deserve. This property isn't located, for example, on the corner, and they didn't look at it the way that they should have. So that's why we had to break them all down and have you look at them as separate ones, just to follow that kind of uniformity of following the public hearings, since they are different properties. With that said, I am having trouble getting up my share screen doesn't want to share my PowerPoint, so bear with me.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So we did 13 and 14. Is this public hearing now for 15 and 16, or are we moving on to 17 and 18?
You're on 15 and 16 now.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, you bet. So this is a request exactly the same as what you just reviewed for this one.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, here we go. Okay. But again, because it is a separate parcel, I do need to go through it all again. So single family residence and detached ADU within the avalanche hazard overlay district blue zone located on Cement Street. The property is located within the R2 district, and you can see the 2 properties located in that purplish color along undeveloped right of way of Cement Street. So you have the 3 applications before you today. I did want to note also with this one, the original application request and planning commission review were regarding additional request for the bed and breakfast that has been withdrawn for this property. So there's a little bit of, as you know, kind of a little bit of discrepancy in what you're looking at, but before you tonight is for this property is just use subject to review to permit a year-round single-family residence within the avalanche hazard district, a use subject to review to permit an accessory dwelling unit within the R2 district, and a use subject to review to permit development, detached ADU within the avalanche hazard district. So first of all, within the multiple family residential district, you have a single family residence is allowed by right. So you're really just looking at, is the town feel that this proposed accessory dwelling unit does fit within this residential district? The single family residence and ADU do meet that purpose statement, which is providing an area for multifamily and single family dwelling units. And per code, an ADU is essentially a single family dwelling unit that is not considered density. Within the Compass Master Plan, you have a neighborhood mixed use, which you're well familiar with those definitions. So I'm not going to read them because they were also reflected in the staff report, but it does support single family, multifamily, and some higher density along with commercial uses within that district. The applicant did submit everything required for uses by special review for these applications. So section 16-150 as far as submittal requirements has all been complied with. The proposed accessory dwelling unit, again, this is in reflection to the R2 district. Staff did note it provides a long-term housing unit, which is express need within the town in the Compass Plan. All of the requirements based on the ADU requirement are being proposed to be complied with, including size restrictions, occupancy limits, setbacks, and other dimensional requirements. At time of building permit submittal, the staff will review the design of the proposed elevations and structures of the ADU to ensure that it complies with the design standards. The proposed utility designs are also in compliance with code requirements for ADUs, and the ownership and use will be required to be complied with for ADUs also. So the applicant has shown 2 on-street parking spaces to be located on Cement Street adjacent to the subject parcel as required by the code. The town public works director has noted that this is undeveloped right away. The proposed location for cars to be parked is okay, but they do want the applicant and owner to follow the town procedure, which is to design, construct, and potentially maintain. The maintenance will be worked out at a later date with public works, the section of right of way up until the parking for this ADU. So that is a suggested condition in here, and that is the condition ties that to being complied with prior to a CO. So basically you don't necessarily want part of a road to be completely constructed before you even start a building permit, because it's nice to have that dirt in access for construction vehicles, not messing up with a new design. So basically the applicant will work with the design of a new section of right of way with public works. They'll begin to construct it probably at the same time that they are constructing the structures on the house if they are approved. And then while they're doing that, the maintenance costs will be figured out. And then basically no certificate of occupancy would be issued until Public Works has signed off on the road improvements being completed. So Avalanche Hazard Overlay District. You have a proposed single family residence is a use permitted by right within the zone district. Because this is in the blue zone, the town does not require an avalanche report to be submitted. The applicant has had that report done and they are planning on following it. Staff didn't get into the details of that report within the staff report. The written report that you received that was also given to Planning Commission, and also not during this presentation because it technically isn't required to be submitted with their application before the Planning Commission for the blue zone. The applicant is planning on following it because they understand the safety of needing to construct it per the engineer requirements in that report. But I wanted to explain kind of why town didn't focus on the report for this property. As you can see, it's just outside the red zone. Proximate area is right in here based on the town avalanche hazard overlay map or hazard mitigation map. So the proposed structure will be required to meet the R2 district dimensional standards, and that is being proposed to be complied with. Staff's not suggesting any other restrictions on the structures as far as setbacks or dimensional requirements go. You have the code requirements that you're all familiar with, that the plans be stamped construction and avalanche hazard districts. Indemnification agreements for the owner has been submitted. That'll get recorded prior to the building permit. And also any renters which will be required to be rented, obviously with the ADU proposed use. Those renters will also be required to submit that indemnification agreement for the parcel each, and that would be any future renters, not just first time rentals. Public comments were received. One was written in the staff report and a couple were received after it was published, and the Planning Commission also received some verbal public comments at their Planning Commission meeting. Most of the concerns that were brought up were related to the bed and breakfast, which is now not being discussed for this parcel. A couple of comments though did address the impact of traffic and also some concern of what bringing full-time residences residing in the avalanche hazard overlay district, how that they had some concerns over that use full-time in there. The Planning Commission did review these items on November 1st. As noted, at that point of time with their meeting, the bed and breakfast had not been withdrawn. So the Planning Commission did make motions to recommend denial of the bed and breakfast. I did want to note 2 planning commissions were actually in support of the bed and breakfast also, but despite that, since this vote was made is partly why the applicant went and withdrew their bed and breakfast applications for this property. So with regards to recommendations from the Planning Commission that are before you tonight on the motions you're looking at, the Planning Commission did recommend the supported conditions and motions before you tonight to allow the ADU within the R2 district, to allow an ADU within the avalanche hazard overlay district. Again, the blue zone, as you noted before. And then the Planning Commission also made a motion unanimously to recommend the Board of Trustees approve the request for an avalanche hazard development permit to allow a year-round single-family residence on this property. So with that said, I'm happy to go into suggested conditions and motions if you have any questions, but I'll turn it back over to you for right now until you have questions.
Okay, thanks, Katie. And do we have any applicant input on this one that is either in person or attending online?
Matt, can you open the attendees so we can see if anyone's raising their hand? There you go. All right.
So I'm not seeing. Sorry,
we have no one in person, and if someone online would like to comment, please raise your hand and we will promote you to panelist.
Yeah.
We don't see any.
Okay, seeing none, we will close public comment for this public hearing and move on to deliberation and discussion decisions. We're going to become really familiar with these blocks. All right, well, if there's no discussion, oh, do we have discussion?
Nope, no comment, we were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, let's move on. We are going to make 3 motions for this one as well. We'll want to make sure we get those numbers right for the lot. And okay, Katie, it looks like this is the one you have up is where we are. Great. So I will just tee it up. If someone would like to make a motion that the recommended conditions set forth be taken and to approve with conditions the request for the use by special review application for an avalanche hazard development permit to allow a year-round single-family residence within the avalanche hazard overlay district blue zone for the property located at lots 15 through 16, block 15, Silverton.
So moved.
Second.
Awesome. Roll call.
Trustee Davis.
Yes.
Trustee Kreener.
Yes.
Trustee Beerman.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yeas, 3 absent.
Okay, then let's move on to our next public hearing.
Wait, you have two more.
Two more.
Motions.
Oh my gosh, sorry. Thank you. Hello. Okay. Second of 3 motions. Would someone like to make a motion that the recommended conditions set forth be taken and to approve with conditions the request for the use by special review application to allow an accessory dwelling unit within the R2 multiple family residential district for the property located at lots 15 through 16, block 15, Silverton.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Trustee Davis.
Yes.
Trustee Kreener.
Yes.
Trustee Beerman.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yeas, 3 absent.
Okay, and now our third of 3 motions on this application. I move, or would someone please move that the recommended conditions set forth be taken and to approve with conditions the request for the use by special review application for an avalanche hazard development permit to allow an accessory dwelling unit within the avalanche hazard overlay district blue zone for the property located at lots 15 through 16, block 15, Silverton.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Trustee Davis.
Yes.
Trustee Kreener.
Yes.
Trustee Beerman.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yeas, 3 absent.
Okay. Now,
So confused.
thanks everybody.
Now I get it.
Now we will move on to our 4th public hearing, which is also a use by special review for a bed and breakfast establishment in the R2 district, a use by special review for an accessory dwelling unit in the R2 district, a use by special review for an avalanche hazard development permit to allow an accessory dwelling unit within the avalanche hazard overlay district, blue zone, and a use by special review for an avalanche hazard development permit to allow a seasonal bed and breakfast establishment within the avalanche hazard overlay district, blue zone, for the property located at lots 17 through 18, block 15, Silverton, Colorado. The applicant, Casey Clifford and Miles LaHue.
Great, thank you,
Okay,
Sally.
we'll kick it back to you, Katie.
Excellent, thank you. So as you heard and saw in your staff reports, that this is for a bed and breakfast and a detached ADU within the avalanche hazard overlay blue zone on Cement Street. I did want to note that, and I'll mention this as we get to the Planning Commission update too, that whereas each one of these applications is looked at on its own by its own property, the Planning Commission was kind of thinking about how it, before them that night, there were 3 different bed and breakfasts being proposed. And they were thinking about that kind of consolidated impact on the neighborhood. So whereas definitely still take the recommendation and consider it, I also wanted to note that it could have potentially been slightly different if maybe they only had 1 bed and breakfast before them. The applicant did request and asked to go back to the Planning Commission to have a new review performed on this application when it wasn't convoluted as much. However, staff recommended that it move forward to Board of Trustees because we felt like you could do a thorough job reviewing it and based on what is being proposed before you tonight. So I just didn't want to give that little backup that the applicant was requesting also. So definitely take a look at this as it is before you tonight. Take into consideration any public comments that you receive, but just note that anything that was received prior to last Friday morning was based on the overall idea that 3 bed and breakfasts could go in on this half of a block or a quarter of this portion of a block of property with the different applications that were all submitted and being reviewed. So as you know, this property is located within Avalanche Hazard Overlay District. You've got the 2 lots located right here. You have the undeveloped right of way of Cement Street coming in this area here. So before you tonight, you have 4 reviews. Staff is requesting that you make 4 separate motions and 4 separate votes on them. If by chance there is a denial on a bed and breakfast based on recommendations of Planning Commission, then staff is going to recommend you then continue to vote on a single family dwelling. Just as a disclaimer to these motions that we want to make, we have some backup going on in the back in case you followed some of the Planning Commission recommendation. Okay. So before you tonight, you have a use subject to review to permit a bed and breakfast establishment within the R2 district. You have a use subject to review to permit an accessory dwelling unit within the R2 district. And then you have a use subject to review to permit development, a detached ADU within the Avalanche Hazard District. And then you have a use subject to review to permit development, basically seasonal operation of a bed and breakfast within the Avalanche Hazard District. So 4 different applications for this property are before you tonight. So with regards to the first 2 that I went through, the request for a bed and breakfast establishment and an accessory dwelling unit in the R2 multiple family residential district, both of those uses are before you for this because they are uses subject to review based on the R2 district. So the ADU staff finds meets the purpose statement of the R2 district as the district is intended to provide single family dwelling units. And the ADU is essentially a single family dwelling unit that is not considered density based on some code requirements. The nature of the bed and breakfast establishment, with transient guests on a short-term basis, staff couldn't really clearly put it within the purpose statement of the R2 district, which is that the district is established for the purpose of providing an area for multifamily and single family dwelling units. However, that's where it comes down to the town determining, does this proposed operation, is it well suited to the location it's proposed within? And that special review confirms that anticipated negative impacts are being mitigated with the application. Staff does note that as we go through this, that it is a use subject to review. It's not a prohibited use. So just because it's not clearly stated a bed and breakfast in the purpose statement, you do have that the town has determined based on uses within the R2 district that a bed and breakfast establishment may be good. It just needs a little subject. It needs extra review, and that's what's before you tonight. So the Silverton Compass Master Plan does define this as neighborhood mixed use in the framework map. With that noted, that neighborhood mixed use is similar to the current economic development district, but it would include all housing types as well as triplexes, multifamily, such as 4 and 8 unit buildings, creative spaces, and some commercial uses. Staff does find that a bed and breakfast does really fit into this designation of our neighborhood mixed use that's identified in that Compass Master Plan as a guiding document for the town. So again, the application had to follow special kind of requirements when they go through a use by special review outlined in the code. Staff reviewed that and it's outlined in the staff report more thoroughly, but we did want to note that those requirements have all been met with the application submittal before you tonight. So breaking it down a step, you have the ADU in the R2 district that I just reviewed a little bit of in the bed and breakfast. Focusing in on the bed and breakfast right now, specifically within that R2 district. The application materials state that the bed and breakfast operation will operate only during summer months, May through November. The unit will have 2 bedrooms for the rental. The maximum number of guests permitted will be 4 at a time, and that there will be an on-site manager, which is required by the town code. So going through the definition of a bed and breakfast, which is in the Silverton code, a single family residential dwelling used as a lodging establishment for transient guests staying 30 days or less, and which has a common guest area, contains no more than 5 guest rooms, and is operated by the on-site owner or resident manager. Sorry about that R missing. So based on the definition of a bed and breakfast in the town code, what the applicant is proposing does comply with that. The application materials don't specify specifically the maximum length of stay, character of architectural design, or floor layout, but those aren't necessary to be reviewed at this time. They are going to be required to be provided, reviewed, and approved with connection to the building permit to construct a bed and breakfast if this application is approved by the town. So the towns, you saw in your staff report that staff is recommending a couple of special conditions, and to note a couple of them that are in there tied specifically to the bed and breakfast. We did suggest that requirements stated in the definition are complied with at time of building permit application. That's to make sure that at the time of building permit application, the building department or somebody at the town does ensure that the maximum number of bedrooms is complied with and other items in there. Based on the size of a lot, these are not going to be able to be large structures to meet setbacks and other things. So we don't see a concern with it. We just kind of wanted to make sure that the town remembered that they should be reviewing these requirements at time of a building permit review. And then the other one we threw in as a suggested condition for the board is applicants showing full compliance with the definition of a bed and breakfast, including evidence that there is an on-site owner or resident manager prior to the town issuing a business license. So what that does is basically you get the structure built as a bed and breakfast, then the owner is going to need to attain a business license. We would like the town, staff is suggesting that the town make sure before they issue that business license that the applicant is meeting the definition of a bed and breakfast, including that there's an on-site owner or resident manager is required by the code. So it's kind of the background between those special conditions that you saw in the staff report. With those special conditions, staff does find that the submitted application for the bed and breakfast within the R2 district is compliance with the code requirements. So moving on to the accessory dwelling unit within the R2 district, the town code has a bunch of different items that the town can look at and or has to require is complied with for accessory dwelling units. Those were broken down in detail in your staff report, but staff did want to note that an ADU does provide another long-term housing unit within the town. It does comply with size restrictions and occupancy limits outlined within the code. It also complies with setbacks and other dimensional requirements of the R2 district. The application materials note that the proposed kind of a design standards and that it will comply and it'll kind of look like modest miners cabins. That will be required to be complied with, and staff would check that at the time of building permit review. And then the utility designs are in compliance with the code, and the ownership and the use shall be complied with. So the other part of the accessory dwelling unit is parking. So just to note, the town code does not actually have parking requirements for the bed and breakfast on this property. So parking cannot, by staff's review, we didn't bring up parking for the bed and breakfast because it's not a code requirement that's specifically stated in there. But what is in there is that for accessory dwelling units, they are not required to have on-premise parking, but they are required to show the availability of 2 on-street parking spaces adjacent to the parcel. So to comply with that, the application materials state that 2 on-site parking spaces will be located on Cement Street adjacent to the subject parcel. Staff notes that because it's undeveloped right-of-way, it is going to be required to be constructed to town standards. That did come from the Public Works Director, and he noted his Town of Silverton standards and specifications. Within that document, you have the chapter for curb, gutter, sidewalk, alley, and street construction. So if this applications are approved and if the applicant moves forward with these structures, then they will be required to pay for design, construction, and potentially be in charge of maintenance for this section of the right-of-way in order to provide the required parking on Cement Street for the ADU. And a condition has been suggested to ensure that that occurs prior to a certificate of occupancy being issued. The details of those design standards and construction requirements would be worked out by the Public Works Department and the applicant, and the Public Works Department would have the final sign off that those were completed to their satisfaction prior to a CO being issued for either structure on the property. So, sorry, I'll back up one step just to be clear that with the suggested conditions, the staff found the submitted application for the ADU within the R2 district is in compliance with relevant code sections that are referenced there and in your staff report. So moving on to the avalanche hazard overlay district, you are in the blue zone, the property is within the blue zone and it's shown on your map here that's clipped. Within the avalanche hazard district, the structures will be required to meet the dimensional standards of the R2 district. They are proposed to meet that. It will be required to be, or it will be reviewed as all site plans are with the building permit submittal. And so because of that, staff is not suggesting any supplemental requirements or restrictions for the proposed structure. For so avalanche hazard overlay district section of the code, under that you have restrictions on development in the avalanche hazard district. That full language was included in your staff report, so I'm just kind of noting the relevant part of staff review for you here, which is staff noted that a lodging establishment such as a bed and breakfast, it is open to the general public. Therefore, we found, based on definitions in the code, it's used for public occupancy. So because of the nature of the lodging operation and given the transient and business operational nature of the bed and breakfast, the proposed use will increase human occupancy of the subject property beyond a single family home. So because of that, if the applicant wasn't proposing the seasonal use, you probably would not be seeing staff report on this application. Staff did spend a lot of time kind of really trying to dig into this and consider the code language and what was being proposed. So since the applicant is proposing to not operate the bed and breakfast and not host short-term guests during winter and early spring months, the impact will essentially be mitigated. So because with a suggested condition prohibiting the bed and breakfast from operating in winter months, it provides a method to verify that the increased human occupancy of the bed and breakfast use won't occur, basically, and therefore it takes away the concern of the increased public occupancy within the avalanche hazard overlay district. So a couple of other general statements within the district regulations that we did want to note. One is that the plans will have to be stamped construction and avalanche hazard district blue zone. A condition has been put on that suggested that would ensure that this was done so that the building permit could kind of check that box off when they get that application. You also have the indemnification agreement being required. The applicant has already submitted this as a property owner. And when they go to submit, if this is approved and it moves forward and they have any tenants in the accessory dwelling unit and or in the primary structure during the winter months, again, not bed and breakfast operation, just say they rented their primary structure, any tenant on the property would be required to also submit that notarized indemnification agreement. And the owner has stated and confirmed that they are very familiar with this requirement and that they will follow it for the town. So that's another kind of support of why staff is confirming that the seasonal operation is okay, is that essentially if this bed and breakfast operated during the November through April months, this probably would be very difficult for the property owner to receive an indemnification agreement for every renter of the bed and breakfast establishment. So again, some of these conditions are just confirming what the applicant has already stated, such as they will not be operating the bed and breakfast during the winter months. But we did want to note that the ADU tenant would be required to submit that indemnification agreement still. Public comments were received on this application both before the Planning Commission meeting and some were received verbally at the Planning Commission meeting. Not sure if anybody is on tonight to echo their thoughts, so I did want to give an overview of what has been received so far. You did have 3 landowners who live within the vicinity of this property who is opposed to commercial uses in the neighborhood, including a bed and breakfast use. They also raised concerns regarding the undeveloped street and alley supporting the project site. Again, that concern would be addressed because the applicant with a suggested condition would be required to improve the section of street in front of this lot. They also raise concern over full-time residents within the avalanche hazard overlay district, which would be within that ADU unit. Also, It was noted that as a side, this isn't connected as much to this, but that caps and restrictions on vacation rentals should apply to B&Bs. There isn't a cap right now, so that isn't something that the board can consider in relation to this application itself. With that said, moving on to the Planning Commission meeting, they also had public comments received that revolved around concerns with the adequate parking for the bed and breakfast establishment. Lack of clarity, they felt in these again, public comments, lack of clarity in the application materials and concerns regarding building in the avalanche district. I did also want to just reiterate here that the public comments received were regarding the perception that 3 bed and breakfasts were being applied for within the same section of this within the block. And that the public comments nothing has been received from the public since 2 of the bed and breakfast proposals have been removed and withdrawn. So just wanted to note that they were received. They very well could still be valid from those public who made the comments, but it'd be interested to see if anybody is on tonight or at the meeting who is going to provide any further comments on this application for the 1 bed and breakfast establishment. So Planning Commission reviewed the staff report, staff presentation, and public comment. And they went ahead and made the following motions for the Board of Trustees. These were included in a memorandum in your staff reports, or there was attached to the staff report. So I won't read through them all, but essentially they did recommend the Board of Trustees deny the request for the bed and breakfast in the R2 district and also deny the request for the special use application for the bed and breakfast establishment within the avalanche hazard development area, district. They did support and recommend approval of the accessory dwelling unit within the R2 district, and they also recommended support of the ADU within the avalanche hazard district. And they made an additional motion that recommended the Board of Trustees approve a request for a use by special review application for the avalanche hazard development permit to allow the single family residents within the avalanche hazard district on this property. So the Planning Commission voted to deny the bed and breakfast request or recommend denial of the bed and breakfast request, but they did recommend the board approve the ADU and also a single family residence. I did want to note that these 4 motions were made combined. And so the 2 motions regarding the bed and breakfast were not supported by 2 Planning Commission members who did find that they felt that they wanted to have the Board of Trustees recommend approval of the bed and breakfast within the avalanche district and within the R2. So the overall motion to the Board of Trustees was 4-2 in support of denying the bed and breakfast. You had 2 Planning Commission members who were in support of it. I think I made that a little confusing the way it came out. So let me know if you have any questions on that. And then with that said, staff is suggesting that the Board of Trustees does recommend, we are recommending approval of all 4 applications before you tonight for the bed and breakfast and the accessory dwelling units with the suggested conditions. And we wouldn't suggest approval without those suggested conditions, just to be clear. So I will not read through each of those, but happy to answer any questions as you have them and happy to pull up any of this if you would like it brought up to you as you have your discussion and public comments received, if any.
Okay, thank you, Katie, once again. Okay. No. Shoot. Sorry. I'm not sure if I can hear you guys. Can somebody talk?
Hello.
Okay, great. I can hear you. Okay, so do we have the applicant on the meeting tonight? Would the applicant like to make any comments?
The applicant is not present tonight.
Actually, Charlotte,
Right.
right?
Oh, she wasn't. Okay.
Okay. Then let's open it up for public comment. If you would like to make a comment, you can step forward if you're in person or raise your hand if you are on Zoom.
There is no comments in person.
Okay, and it looks like we have a comment on Zoom. Would you please introduce yourself? And I think Matt will allow you to speak.
Matt, I think you have to. She's over on the almost now. She's gone.
Oh no.
No, she's here. There we go. She just went to panelist.
Okay.
Okay, great. Now just unmute yourself and the floor is yours. Oh, Charla, sorry. Can you unmute yourself again? It looked like you did it for a second. There, I think we should be able to hear you now. But I can't.
Found it. Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sorry,
Thanks,
I'm
Sarah.
new at this, guys, and I don't speak in public very often. So anyway, my name is Charla Andrietta, and I'm speaking for myself and Mike, my husband. And Silverton's already trying to cap how many short-term rentals we have. And I believe a bed and breakfast is worse than a weekly rental because people can potentially come a night or two and leave. And so I think that would have more traffic and be worse, I think. And I'm not comfortable with not knowing what these buildings are going to look like, because they're saying they'll do that after all these approvals and everything, but it makes me wonder why they don't want to show us what these buildings are going to look like. You know, to have this many buildings coming into this area over here that's all residential right now. I'm not comfortable with that. And she said that you guys don't have caps on the weekly rentals, and I believe we do. Aren't we at the cap right here in this zone over here?
Sorry, this is just a public comment.
Pardon? Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. Well, I really have a problem then with the bed and breakfast guys. I think we've got the short-term rentals are already becoming a problem in Silverton. We have too many, and a bed and breakfast I feel would have a larger impact.
Do we have any other public comments? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public comment period for this public hearing and move on to trustee discussion.
I think I'm a little thrown off with the addition of the bed and breakfast here at the end. I mean, like the first two, just kind of like as that went through, feeling pretty comfortable about single family houses and ADUs, but the bed and breakfast makes me a little hesitant. It's like, if that's something we'd like to think about, I think it should go back to the planning commission for another review. Like to look at it and get a public comment on one bed and breakfast in that zone. I agree with our last public comment. That's like a lot of structures going into one little space. And if they want to change the plan, then they kind of have to like go back to the starting line.
I would agree with that. I share the same sentiment and kind of don't understand the difference between a short-term rental and a bed and breakfast, if there's a difference.
Yeah.
Katie, would you be able to clarify for our commenter and for all of us for the record what we have or what it means to have caps for the vacation rentals versus how our code talks about bed and breakfast? So we can just all make sure we all are on the same page, because it does seem a bit confusing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Of course. And I will also add that if you want to send it back to planning commission review, that's completely fine. I do not know why the applicant's not on tonight. They were definitely aware of this and very interested in the meeting. So I don't know if there's some kind of a glitch, but they also have not emailed me about having trouble connecting. However, I can say that they did request to go back anyway, so I know that they'd be in support of going back. And because there's no planning commission meeting in November, the rest of the month, they weren't going to be delayed by coming to you first to get that recommendation. So if you decide to proceed with that, I do feel confident that the applicant would be in support of that going back also. So as far as a vacation rental and bed and breakfast, you basically have two different uses in your code. So they're broken down into two different defined uses. So you have defined uses, and then you also have if they're allowed in different districts. So for example, within the R2 district, you have a bed and breakfast establishment is a use subject to review. And you also have a defined use of vacation rental as a use subject to review. So even if they seem to be a little bit convoluted in people's mind through the town code, they're two defined separate usage classifications. So then what we do is we go down and we look at the definitions of them both. So I'm pulling those up. You basically, I feel like you're pretty familiar because I referenced the definition of a bed and breakfast earlier being a single family home. Pulling up the vacation rental one. So just give me a second here. Okay, so for a vacation rental definition, and again, this is through the town code, a residential dwelling unit, including either a single family or a multifamily unit, assessed and taxed as a residential dwelling unit, rented for the purpose of transient lodging or transient living accommodations for a maximum period not to exceed 30 consecutive days to the same renter, with tenancies defined per zone per month. Now the part that I'm going to get into is it helps you see the difference between the vacation rental and bed and breakfast. So the next sentence within vacation rental definition is hotels, motels, lodges, inns, bed and breakfasts, RV spaces, and campsites are not vacation rentals. So they sound the same, but the code clearly says they're going to be different. Bedrooms within a single family dwelling or multifamily unit are prohibited from being used as vacation rentals. So it is the definitions are a bit vague within the town code, but it's clear they're separate. It's also clear that bed and breakfast definition has that common area, has the on-site manager and I think that on-site manager is a very big difference between the vacation rental definition requirements and the bed and breakfast. As noted, the town does have caps on vacation rentals. And I am not sure if in the R2 district, the vacation homes have reached a cap or not. So I can't answer that question. But again, that would be a separate conversation because it's different use than bed and breakfast. With that said, what the what the Board of Trustees is looking at is, as far as the R2 district, do you find that this meets, if you find that it meets the requirements of a use subject to review? If you don't, you would need to really come up with defined reasons of how it does not meet the definitions and the basically purpose statement for the R2 district for it to not be a use allowed in the R2. Now you could look at adverse impacts to the neighborhood. You can look at things like that, but you'd want to think ahead on some of that as you think through this project. Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think too, like what Jeff and Jordan said, we have our master plan as a guiding document and we have our code, and I feel like our master plan really shows that we have a town top goal as addressing housing and land use in Silverton and to promote long-term housing and address our housing shortage. And I can appreciate the applicant's intent to have the single family residents have occupants, even when it's, not when they're not in it, instead of it sitting vacant. But I think that if we start to approve more short-term rentals like a bed and breakfast, or if we start to approve more bed and breakfast, then we might create adverse incentives for land use. And so it seems to me like going forward with a bed and breakfast in this manner runs a bit counter to our master plan goals for creating long-term housing, because then we create this incentive that lots like this can be used for things like a bed and breakfast, which are very similar to a vacation rental, which we have chosen to cap.
But just to comment on one, like you said, to have a place occupied, they're not there. I think that's the on-site manager is like the big difference factor with the bed and breakfast.
Right. Well, I think in the application, the applicants were making the argument that like by being able to have it as a bed and breakfast, they could rent it out, the single family unit, when they are not using it themselves. And that could be appealing because then it's not sitting vacant.
Yeah.
But I still think that using the land in this way may run counter to our master plan because it may create incentives to allow more parcels to be used for short-term rentals, in this case, a bed and breakfast, but in actuality, it's a short-term rental.
Yeah, I agree with, sorry, go ahead, Dean.
No, yeah, I was just gonna say I could fully support sending this back to the planning commission since it has changed so substantially from what we originally had.
With the fact
Yeah,
that
nice.
that might not change our decision after all anyways, just to be very clear about the process. And
true,
sending it back is just the idea to like say, okay, wait, you're changing it, we have to reset, but like I would say that.
Well, I think, Jeff, that's a relevant question as well, because we're missing several members of our board who voted in the planning commission already. And if we are sending it back to the planning, I guess I think we should ask ourselves, does it make sense to go back to the planning commission for this applicant or does it not? Katie, it sounded like you said that the applicant is very open to going back to the planning commission. You know, I don't want to waste anybody's time. And so if this board is going to make the same decision because we have the information in front of us, then maybe it doesn't make sense to go back to the planning commission. But if they would like to go back, maybe that makes sense. So I don't know.
And I think you worded that really well. I think if you, you all are smart enough, you understand your code requirements to go ahead and make this, to make a vote. But if you do feel like you really want to hear more from the planning commission, then you obviously can ask them to. I kind of two sides of it. One is the planning commission's only supposed to be reviewing it based on what's before them, which is one bed and breakfast. However, it's hard to block out the fact that they also were aware that two others were being proposed. And so, my initial thought is I'd go ahead and make a vote. However, you can definitely send it back, and I know the applicant would not be opposed to that, especially if they felt they should have more of a chance to explain themselves or maybe come up with more information. If you sent it back, maybe also request more information be provided if you have anything that could be discussed specifically.
And that's a good point, Katie. We're supposed to be taking these as three individual things, but essentially they've kind of came in the same with the same proposal. And so it's hard not to see them as one thing.
Correct. Yeah.
That's how I viewed them reading going over my packet. And so that's where my opinion comes from. So.
Yeah, I think an important distinction for me on this one, because I do see how the master plan can support the mixed use approval in a neighborhood like this, but I really agree with what the other trustees have said so far. And this particular proposal says that, to me, sounds like there's two separate dwellings, and that an on-site manager is living in an ADU and the single family residence is being operated as the bed and breakfast. And so that, for lack of a better word, feels like sort of to go along with what Dana was saying, the definition of paving a loophole in the vacation rental code for calling it a bed and breakfast while operating it as a vacation rental. And I just think that the design of this project doesn't meet, from what I understand. And again, this may be information to request in another round of reviewing, but I would like to understand how this gets operated as a bed and breakfast, because if the on-site manager is living in the single family residence and operating a bedroom out of the single family residence, that's sort of a different story than if they're living in an ADU and they're operating a separate detached structure. And so potentially that's a question. And then also I know that before they go forward with plans and designs, in the submission process for the application, they kind of want to know if this is going to be an approved project or if it's viable in this district. But I think the design has an impact here on the decision. So that would be additional information I would look for. And then let me just check here. Oh, and then I also wondered about this street improvement requirement. I think that if that's something that this one, and again, kind of back to Jeff's point, it's hard to sort of isolate this as a single request, but looking at it as a single request, if the street improvements happen as a result of this project, and then the other property owners decide to put in applications for similar projects, going for it again, having been denied the first time, is there like a reimbursement structure? How does the street improvement work with the other property owners? Do they share that cost? Do they coordinate that design? I mean, I know that's kind of a little bit down the road, so to speak, haha. But just knowing that this is sort of an idea that's out there with these 3 applicants, I just think like the interaction of them actually matters in the discussion. So I support having the planning commission. I think there's a lot of reasons to have the planning commission take another look at this and have a really clear picture of what the design is and really look at it sort of as, as this one application.
I think too, if it goes back to the planning commission, I'm still a little bit stuck on this idea of operating a B&B in the avalanche zone. I know Katie, you on the staff side certainly felt like the applicant was mitigating those concerns by indicating that they would only operate seasonally, but that's still, and I know that the town doesn't have to monitor that, but it's still, to me, just creates some potential incentives down the road for like, oh, this property seems pretty good. Why can't we rent out a room in January when Silverton Mountain is running and fly under the radar? And I don't know, it just, having it licensed as a B&B and potentially increasing occupancy in an avalanche zone poses some concerns to me that are partly mitigated by the applicant's reference that they would only open it seasonally, but it feels a little bit like a slippery slope.
And I think counter to what you said before, Dana, that, the idea in the master plan that we're really seeking, we want to make sure that we look at longer term housing solutions. And
yeah, exactly.
Then it's still a seasonal rental and it comes with its own complications for it to be year-round rental. And I think potentially, and this is a little really late in the game to be raising this question, which I had earlier in the game and I just decided not to go there. But I think as we, as land becomes scarcer and scarcer in Silverton, we're going to see more requests for development in the avalanche zones. And I think we're going to have to, I'm wondering what kind of hole we're digging for ourselves right now.
Well, and separate from this public hearing, it may be a larger discussion that we're raising. So
Yeah, separate from this public hearing, which is why I didn't bring up earlier, but now it's like almost 1 a.m. where I am, so just putting it all out there.
So Katie, to ask you, do you think we should move forward and approve the things that we're comfortable approving, or just kind of table this and come back to it after the applicant goes back to the planning commission?
It sounds like you gave enough just reasons or requests for some further information. So with that, I think you're justified. I would probably recommend you send it back to the planning commission. It also, I think, helps kind of help the situation that the applicant's not on the meeting. I know that if they were on the meeting, they'd provide you further information about the use and the operation and rental of the bed and breakfast that they provided planning commission, but I don't really feel like it's my place to speak for them when they made that verbal testimony at the planning commission. So it does sound like I would almost say I now am supporting you sending it back. I think from what I heard, your request basically is for planning commission to take a look at it again, to get more information on how the structures will be designed to comply with the code, how they will be, sorry, I'm trying to read my chicken scratch here. A little bit more justification on how the owners will guarantee that it would not be operated in the winter months or restrict that bed and breakfast residency, and also just maybe have the owner clarify how to ensure the town that what they're doing is not a vacation rental. Those were all things that were brought up at the planning commission and that were discussed by the planning commission and the applicant. But again, without having the applicant on the meeting, I think it also makes it a little bit difficult for you because you can't hear that directly from them. If you did that, I guess my one thought or question, which I just need to figure out, and Clayton's will be able to help out with this, is if it goes back to planning commission and then moves forward again to you for the request, I'm not sure if the board of trustee members who are not present tonight will be able to review it, or if they can review the recording of this meeting and then review it. So we'll just need to figure out if just the 4 of you will need to be present at the meeting it's at, or if somehow it can be opened up to other members to also review. That's just one thing in my head that I need to figure out. So.
Thank you. Do we need to make a motion to table it and send it back to planning commission? Is that procedurally?
Yeah, for further information. And I normally would always ask you to table it to a date certain. However, with holidays coming up and being uncertain if there will be a planning commission meeting in December or not, I'd hate to have you schedule it to a date certain. So what I would probably request is you table it, and Clayton, definitely give me your opinion, that be tabled to a meeting after the planning commission reviews it again. However, what we'll do is notice it. And so the public hearing requirements will be met for a new meeting date when that meeting date is established. The other option is if you know for sure of a board of trustees date you can continue it to that date, and then you could always open it and continue it again if the planning commission hasn't looked at it.
And do we have certain requirements of like certain number of days we have to review it anyways, or does that change if we're tabling it?
Because you began looking at it and you're requesting more application, it could be more information. It could pretty much come under it being not complete and then being reviewed further. And that's why I requested that you be clear on what exactly you want addressed still at this point in time. Or you can go ahead and make motions. Your choice.
I'm fine either way. I feel comfortable making motions on this tonight if you guys are, but I'm also, if you feel like you need to table it, we can table it. Fine with either.
I can tell you if we make a motion tonight that I will not support the approval of the application for the bed and breakfast. The first bed and breakfast in the R2, and then I think the development of the seasonal operation are connected. So those 2 motions I would not support this evening.
Same here.
I mean, I think that's across the board.
Yeah.
Well, then I mean, we can create clarity there too, if we just want to, and that may be beneficial for the planning commission to use as they deliberate, potentially. And then they'll know kind of what they need to dig into. So
I think the sticking
Would
point to
someone-
me is not having the applicant here, but they also are not here for the public hearing.
yeah, I think yeah. Yeah. Well, let's start making some motions.
Sounds good. See if I can find emotions.
Or Katie, you could click it back maybe a couple pages there.
I think we're on 16. 17, 18.
I think that's what I started with. before, and now I
Yeah,
got-
so here we are there. Do you want me to tee it up?
Sure.
Would someone like to make a motion that the recommended conditions set forth be taken and to approve with conditions the request for the use by special review application to allow a bed and breakfast establishment within the R2 multiple family residential district for the property located at lot 17 through 18, block 15, Silverton?
That'll be a motion for approving it.
Yep, that's what that would be.
Right, so in this case, if we do not
We
wish
make a
to
motion
approve
to
that motion,
deny.
If.
Oh, I
would
was
just
thinking, or we
note,
just
if
vote
you
no.
deny it, it would be denied. So you either have to motion to
Good job
approve,
not saying it.
motion to deny, or motion to table it.
Okay, sorry, I was picturing that we would say, shall I restate it with the words deny? I was just thinking we would all vote against it in the roll call.
And if you do, then that application is closed, just to clarify. And Clayton, correct me if I'm wrong on that. Thank you.
Yeah, you don't want to vote in the negative to try to close something. Either the motion to approve would fail, and then you'd have to immediately make a motion to either deny it and or to table it. So you might as well just start with the motion that you want to approve.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that.
Which
Let's
could be
do
a
this
motion
in
to deny.
We'll do this in a more direct way.
Super clear.
Was that somebody wanting to make the motion to deny? I'll tee it up.
Okay.
I move that the recommended conditions. Oh, shoot, hold on. Set forth be denied for the use by special review application. And do I need to continue negating this motion here, or is that enough?
You should provide why you're denying it.
Oh, goodness.
So it may be, you may want to have a little discussion amongst yourself.
Okay, here. I think we can do.
And you can deny it, but just you want to add, basically that the Board of Trustees, if this is the route you're going, denies the request for the use by special review application to allow a bed and breakfast establishment within the R2 district for the property located at. The reason for denial is that the board finds that the application does not, and then you fill in the blanks.
And then it would be closed, right, Katie? Like then it's not going back to the review board or not going back to planning commission.
If it's voted 4-0, I would say that you made an official decision with that.
And then
we
we
don't need to go on to any other motions.
Well, you would need to still do the other three.
Then we could do the other motions or deny the other motions. Yeah.
Correct. And if you choose to deny the bed and breakfast, then I'm going to throw one more motion at you, which is for a year-round single family residence.
I got it. Okay. I move that the Board of Trustees deny the recommended conditions set forth and deny the conditions for the request for the use by special review application to allow a bed and breakfast establishment within the R2 multifamily residential district for the property located at lots 17 to 18, block 15, Silverton, as the requested use according to the Board of Trustees does not comply with the master plan and the desired use for the land use in that area. Does that work?
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Trustee Davis,
Yes.
trustee Granger,
Yeah.
trustee Bierman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
The motion to deny is approved. 4 yeas, 3 absent.
How's your note taking going over there?
You're a rock star over there. Okay, what's next?
Dina, you want to go for this again?
Okay, what's next? Let me-
Single family home.
Okay, I make a motion to approve the recommended conditions set forth be taken to approve the request for the use by special review application for an avalanche hazard development plan to allow a single family home within the avalanche hazard overlay district for the property located at lot 17 through 18, block 15, Silverton. Is that right for that one, Katie?
Yes.
Second.
We have, okay, thanks, Jeff. Okay, roll call, please, Matt.
Trustee Davis.
Yes.
Trustee Granger,
Yes.
trustee Bierman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney.
Yes.
The motion to approve has been approved. 4 yeas to 3 absent.
Okay, so now we do the
Okay.
last one, which is the application for an ADU in the avalanche hazard overlay district.
Or do we
So
have two more?
you still need to do the ADU in the R2 district. You need to do the ADU in the
Seasonal.
avalanche hazard district, and then you also need to do the bed and breakfast in the avalanche district.
Okay, I got it.
So let's back it up one step, just to be really clear. So your first motion was to deny the bed and breakfast within the R2 district, and that was based on the Board of Trustees finding it didn't meet the master plan, and I'll let the clerk of them to have that official recording. The next one that you did was to permit the single family residence establishment within the R2 district, I believe, and that was with the recommended conditions that were on the screen at the time. Is that?
It was the single family within the avalanche hazard district with the
Okay.
recommendations on the screen. Yeah.
Okay, so I apologize. I'm gonna have you keep
That's okay.
moving, but we might come back to this one because I hadn't given you the actual conditions for a single family suggested conditions, and these are more relevant for the bed and breakfast establishment.
Okay.
And so I feel like I just want to be clear that the single family has conditions attached to it, but ones that are actually connected to a single family home. Okay,
Do you want me to rescind that one?
I do. I apologize.
Okay, that's okay.
Thanks.
All right, you ready, Matt?
Let's do it.
All right, I will rescind my motion for approval with the recommended conditions for the use by special review application for a single family residence within the avalanche hazard overlay district for the property located at lot 17 through 18, block 15, Silverton.
Thank you.
Yep. Clayton, is
Okay.
that acceptable?
Yes, I'll let
Thanks.
the sound reflect on that. Thank you.
Well, I mean, there was a motion and a second and then a vote. Typically, if you're going to unwind it, you're going to have to move to rescind the vote and rescind the motion and the second in, reverse order. Does that make sense? So like if you were to make a vote and then a second, and then you had more discussion, you wanted to change it, then you would have to rescind the second and then rescind the original motion and then remake the motion. So I think you still have to rescind the second and, remake the motion, or, come back to it. I guess Ms. Kim is going to provide the single family residential limitations versus the bed and breakfast conditions. Yeah, but you need to unwind it a little more, make it clear that you're not just rescinding your motion. I mean, you're actually, rescinding the vote on that matter.
So do we need to have, who seconded it?
I think that's,
I did.
you did?
I believe so. I think.
Yes.
We have to have a note somewhere. So I rescind the second.
And then do we need to have a roll call to fully rescind that entire motion and vote?
Then you need to rescind the motion and vote to a roll call.
Okay,
Yes.
so let's do a roll call to rescind the motion and the vote.
Trustee Davis,
Yes.
trustee Craniger,
Yes.
trustee Bierman,
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Bari.
Yes.
Edit undo.
Motion has successfully been rescinded.
And vote.
And vote.
Thank you, Clayton. Okay, so staff has up here suggested conditions for a single family residence, which is essentially what you've looked at for the bed and breakfast, but we took out the requirement specifically tied to the bed and breakfast. And now I'm going to apologize because I have to pick out a different one. That one has the reports for the red zone. So 1 second. What I can recommend is in the meantime, while I prepare the single family, you can make votes on the bed and breakfast in the, sorry, you did the.
We did the R2.
So
We
you
could
can
do the
make a
hazard.
recommend, yes, you can make the motion on the single family in the avalanche hazard district.
I guess I just wonder, like, if we don't, never mind, doesn't matter.
Okay, I make a motion to deny the use subject to review request application for an avalanche hazard development permit to allow a seasonal bed and breakfast establishment within the avalanche hazard overlay district for the property located at 1718 block 15 Silverton. Is that appropriate language for denial? Clayton?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think this is, I think this works, but you also already denied the conditional use and not allowing that property to have a bed and breakfast. So this is probably a moot issue, since if it can't be there anyway as a conditional use, it certainly can't be there in an overlay because you've already denied. But I mean, it doesn't hurt to just, make it clear. And I think that motion was fine.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Trustee Davis.
Yes.
Trustee Craniger,
Yes.
trustee Bierman,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Bari.
Yes.
Motion to deny passes 4 yeas, 3 absent.
Okay, so we've denied the application for the bed and breakfast. And we've approved the single family in
No,
an
we-
avalanche over. Sorry.
We took that one back.
Yeah, okay. All right, where are we here? Sorry, now I've lost my.
Okay, so the bed and breakfast has been denied. Now, the next one up for discussion will be the single family residence within the avalanche hazard overlay district blue zone. And I do have suggested conditions which involve the indemnification agreement, the construction drawings being stamped. And then one indemnification agreement for the property owner, and one for renters, and then a suggested motion if you choose to take it. I apologize for the poor layout I copied it on.
So this is kind of saying, we're going to try and approve right now for these property owners what we have also approved for the other 2 applications.
Correct. So the bed and breakfast definition is a single family with, then it has the rest of the definition. So staff didn't break down a single family in the staff report when there already was, because if the bed and breakfast was approved, it would have been a single family. It would have been approved, incorporated within that definition. But you can't have an accessory dwelling unit without a prime principal structure. So before you can vote on the accessory structure, we need to determine if you're okay with a principal structure being a single family residence within that avalanche hazard district. It is a use permitted by right. So you're not looking at that. You're only looking about the structure within the hazard overlay.
Avalanche. Yep. Okay, so the motion before us works with this conditions above it for single family home. So would someone like to make a motion that the recommended conditions set forth be taken and to approve with conditions the request for the use by special review application for an avalanche hazard development permit to allow a year-round single-family residence within the avalanche hazard overlay district, blue zone, for the property located at lot 17 through 18, block 15, Silverton?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please. Thanks, Matt.
Trustee Davis. Yes. Trustee Greener.
Yes.
Trustee Bierman.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Marty.
Yes.
Motion to approve passes 4 yeas, 3 absent.
Okay, now let's move on to the ADU.
Let's start with the R2 district.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion that the recommended condition set forth be taken and to approve with conditions the request for the use by special review application to allow an accessory dwelling unit within the R2 multiple family residential district for the property located at lot 17 through 18, block 15 in Silverton?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. Roll call, please.
Trustee Davis. Yeah. Trustee Greener.
Yeah.
Trustee Bierman.
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Marty.
Yes.
Motion to approve passes 4 yeas, 3 absent.
Okay, now we can do ADU and the avalanche overlay or avalanche hazard district. Okay. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the recommended conditions set forth and approve the request for the use by special review application for an avalanche hazard development permit to allow an accessory dwelling unit within the avalanche hazard overlay district for the property located at lot 17 through 18, block 15, Silverton?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I think our final roll call of the night.
Trustee Davis.
Yes.
Trustee Greener.
Yes.
Trustee Bierman.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Marty.
Yes.
Motion to approve passes 4 yeas, 3 absent.
Thank you, Katie.
Yes.
And
Thank
Clayton,
you.
yeah, both of you. Joe.
And Matt, that you kept notes of that. Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes, oh, yeah, Clayton. Did you have a comment?
No, I was just accepting your comments. I appreciate it. It was a very fun discussion.
Can't wait for everyone else to watch this.
I love that is a definition of fun. All right, well then, unless there's anything else that we need to cover, I think we've reached the point where we can adjourn this meeting. So the time is, I actually need to figure that out.
8:46.
8:47, 8:46 p.m. And I adjourn this meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you, Sally.
Good night.
Good night.
See you guys.